sport fans watching around the world. This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Let's get straight into the episode.
Yeah, we heading for the sun. Shawty got my high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stun.
Alright y'all, today's a Monday and Mondays are for Docs. Thank you for clicking or tapping and let's start today's spew. Guys, you've read the title of the video, you know who it is. I'm very honoured and excited to be welcoming to the Doxcast for the very first time, John Paul Jr.
Hey mate, thank you so much for having me on, Dax. Appreciate it, bro.
Thank you. Thank you for the coffee too. I needed that coffee.
always a good thing to bring coffee to a podcast.
Yeah, dude. I used to have like a fridge full of, every type of soft drink to sports hydration drink to all this stuff. And every podcast before we start, I have to go 7-Eleven and and then because my brother and sister, everyone would drink it, and I'd spend like $150 just for drinks for the podcast. I'm like, this is getting ridiculous.
From now you need a little fridge in here or something just locked away.
It was getting ridiculous. I need to have a padlock on it.
Yeah, 100%.
And just have one per guest. So now it's just waters, or if someone wants a coffee, I'll make a coffee.
That's
so
it, man.
Appreciate you bringing me a coffee.
No, of course, man. I always bring gifts.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been excited for this episode. I know that we've discussed that as we were leading up to it.
Yeah.
Ever since I came in contact with your social media in general, going through, watching other podcasts you've been a part of, and the posts that you've made as well, I'm going to constantly refer back to other ones that I've seen throughout the time. The further I dug, I just found it more and more intriguing, to be honest with you. And I wasn't just on your story, but it's also your character as well.
Yeah,
I find that to be very interesting as well.
Yeah.
So I try not to do this. I'll let you say it for yourself. I won't put words into your mouth and describe you, but just to share with the channel, how would you describe a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and who you are today?
Oh man, I've actually never been asked what I sort of think of myself, man. Look, I think I have had a pretty tough life, man, and I don't sort of dwell on it as much now as I used to, but I think God has probably brought me from the depths of hell to where I am now. So anybody that's still in that hell, I like to go back and sort of try to help them. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, and the character that God has given me and the heart that God has given me. It's just one of those things that I promised Him once. A little bit of a backstory. I was homeless for just over a decade, addicted to drugs, addicted to just the world, I guess you could call it. And from there, about 7 years ago, I started going to church. My whole life just shifted, and I always used to promise God, man, if I ever made it off the streets, then I would 100% help as many people as I possibly could. And that's still my goal today, man. It's like I want to, not only within Sydney or Australia, I want to make a lasting impact for generations to come, not just this generation, but generations to come and the generations after that. And I think it's one of those things that not many people have the sort of drive and the perspective, I guess you could call it, that I have. I've been there, I've come out of it. By no means have I made it in my life, or am I wealthy in terms of like finances and stuff, but I'm wealthy in knowledge, I'm wealthy in love by Christ. And it's just one of those things, man, that I think if anybody is in a position to be able to help those who need it most, man, I think then we all have a responsibility to do so.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore on that part. I think, to be honest, I almost beat myself up for not doing more whenever I should, which is a good thing because then it pushes to do more. You know, It's a bit of a positive feedback loop in that regard. And I think all of homelessness and charity help that I've seen you do on your social media, it's definitely something I want to get into throughout this podcast. But you mentioned quite a lot of things that I found I could go down paths from.
Man, let's go there.
I'm happy to start digging down these. So you did mention a hard life and homelessness. When would you say that the hardship kind of started?
Look, I think for me, like respects to my family and whatnot, so I'll try not to sort of delve too far deep into it. But my biological dad just wasn't a nice person. You know what I mean? He'd more so see his family as a vent to rage for his rage rather than a family. And my mum, God bless her, man, I absolutely love that woman more than anything. She really copped it by my dad. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that it brought on a lot of pain. I don't think parents especially understand just how much of a role they play in a person's life. It's not just my life that could have been affected, but if I hadn't made a decision when I was younger that I would never be like my dad, then the generations after me and the generations after them probably would have experienced what I experienced, you know. So what I am a massive advocate for is that I love to sort of express that parents have a role far greater than they could imagine. You know what I mean? The words that you speak to your children, your anger, your frustration, your annoyance, even small words like calling him an idiot or anything like that, man, that could have a lasting impact on that child's life. So my dad definitely wasn't a nice human. So for the first 5 to 6 years of my life, it was a household just of anger and like we would be hit a lot of the times and things like that, man. So I grew up with a lot of hate. I grew up with a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. And my mum, God bless her, with her strength and her resilience, got out of that situation. And she met an amazing man now who's still part of her life and still part of my life. He's my dad now. I call him my dad. But yeah, I think that the downward spiral of my life started from a really young age. So when you grow up in a hostile environment, it tends to stick with you at a young age, especially after losing my dad as well. Like I had that sense of rejection, and that sort of carried on through into my teenage years.
I find that when you find a courageous woman who's able to break out of that household environment, I so far in my life haven't met or found anyone stronger than that type of character. You know, that would take so much willpower because you kind of have the safety in a way of, you know, you have the roof over your head, you have all this, and to walk away from that and now to try and take on the responsibility of having the kids by yourself.
Yep.
Like, I have so much respect for the person your mum is, and I've met some amazing women who have made the same decisions. And it's unfortunate, and I'm not trying to justify anyone's actions, but you're right when you say people don't understand the impact they're having as parents on kids.
They really, really don't, man. And I know that our community within Australia is really now starting to become vocal about it. But the thing with an abusive relationship, and look, I can speak firsthand from this because my last relationship was incredibly emotionally and mentally abusive. Hopefully, like I might sort of delve deeper into that later on. But the thing that an abusive partner will do is they will make you feel like you need them. Like there's no other option. Like if you leave me, you're going to be nothing. You're going to be homeless. You're going to have no money. You're going to have these kids with you, and they will pin you down with fear. Now, I think what is really happening within Australia now, and especially like within, I've seen a lot on social media, is that people are starting to speak up. But I think that something more that needs to happen is that men need to speak up. Men need to say to women, we're here to protect you. We don't want you to be in that situation. Like there's some absolute garbage men out there that, and I know that everyone's in their own pain, and it's usually the people that need the most love that ask for it in the most unlovable way. And there's always a monster that created that monster. That's what I always tell people is like, that person is just unable to deal with their emotional responses. And I'm not justifying them by any means, because we all have a choice to be the person we want to be. But I think the greatest thing is that there is a voice about it now. People are really starting to become aware about it. And I feel like more people are sort of becoming that this is an epidemic, man. It's not something that just happens. Like there's so many blokes that go out there and get drunk and then aren't able to sort of regulate their emotions, and they go home and beat their family up. Like if you I'm gonna say this to the camera, if you beat your missus up, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, I only recently, within the last fortnight, I had a situation where I was staying and the neighbour for the place I was staying at was just in one of those moods that they seem to get themselves in all the time. And I wasn't aware because I haven't really been exposed to that neighbour before. And the people in the house were saying, yeah, look, this is kind of just how it is. Like he just gets on the piss on a Friday and a Saturday, and it's just screaming. And like it took a lot to not involve myself in that situation. Like it was genuinely something that kept me up pretty much all night because like I knew there was kids in that house. I knew that woman didn't deserve to be going through that. I know that no matter what, two people it takes two to dance, it takes two to tango, it takes two to argue. But then there was clearly the guy taking it way too far to the extent of screaming and things breaking. And it's like, unfortunately, and fortunately, there is that voice starting to come up, which you mentioned. But unfortunately, I feel like that is a common thing, that it's almost like I want to say there's one in every street.
Yeah, 100%.
There has to be at least one in every street.
But our politicians are doing nothing about it, man.
Yeah.
There's so much leniency on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be lenient.
Yeah.
Like, we saw a couple of weeks ago, a man that had been a repeat offender of women violence goes out and kills 5 or 6 people, man.
Oh, was that the Bondi incident? Yeah, I wasn't aware he was a repeat offender.
He was a repeat offender.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
All right, look, we all make mistakes in our life. Beating a woman or like harassing a woman should be one.
Yeah.
Okay, first time, I'm not saying it should be let go, but there should be a bit. Second time, that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
You need to go to jail. Simple.
Yeah.
You're not going to get let out, mate. Go to rehab. Do what you need to do. You need to be able to control your own emotions, man.
I think that, and I have a mate, and I've said this on the podcast many times, but shout out to my mate Suki, but he gave me this quote once that said, when a man controls his emotions, he wins in life. When his emotions control him, he instantly starts to lose.
Man, that is so true.
Oh, I've never forgotten it. And I've used it so many times in my life through moments of not just anger and frustration, but I've felt it and I've thought about it when I felt sad.
Yeah.
I've felt it when I felt happy. I've felt it when I've been on dates with girls and I feel myself like, oh, I'm into this. And it's like, hang on a minute, think about it. No, my emotions are controlling me right now.
Yeah, 100%.
So you have to learn to control your emotions.
Absolutely. And Jordan Peterson speaks about something, and I think that I have almost mastered this, is that the world teaches you to be meek and just let the world do whatever it wants to do. It's like, no, you should become a monster, but then learn to control it.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peterson and I love that quote.
It's literally the best, man. Like, if we have the capability of like doing something bad, and look, I was a pro boxer for many years.
Okay.
I know what I'm capable of doing. But the fact that I can control that anger, control what I can do to people if I really wanted to, I think that shows greater strength.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Of course. And I am a strong believer in that everyone should learn how to fight, because it's almost like, and I don't know if this could be taught to kids, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately, in the idea of putting kids into fighting, whether it's jiu-jitsu or boxing
100%.
or MMA. But once you know you can beat someone up, I personally was like, oh, well, there's no point fighting this
literally
guy.
none.
You know, like it was so weird, like, because I was training maybe since like, I don't know if I was like 13 or 14 or something like that. And then I probably did it until I was, let's just say, on and off for about 8 years, 9 years I was training, right? And it was mostly boxing, little bit of kickboxing, little bit of Muay Thai, but boxing would be probably primarily. And growing up, it was always like, oh, I want to fight someone. To be honest, I have to fight someone. It's a mean world. I got to learn the skills to defend myself, and let's try and test them out. And then once I got to a level of, and trust me, it was ignorance, and it was just, I've never been as good as I thought I've been when it comes to my training capabilities. But once I believed I had the capability to not only defend myself, but to be able to handle situations better and to make sure other people weren't in danger when we were out, then I just didn't want to fight anymore.
No, that's it. It's usually the loudest person in the room that wants to fight everyone that usually can't fight.
Yeah.
And man, I've been in so many situations now where, like, when you go out to, like, I used to live around Coogee and all that sort of, and when you go out there, there's a lot of people just trying to start fights and just off their heads. They're not meaning to, but they're just like males being males when they're drunk, you know what I mean? And the last one I remember, and this one stuck with me a fair bit. This guy was going around pushing people over, knocking people's beers over, just trying to start a fight, you know what I mean? And he was just acting like it. He's like, I could fucking kill everyone, and sorry for swearing. I could like bash anyone in here, and I was just like, man, I've had it. And he pushed me.
Yeah.
I was like, listen, man, don't do that. And he goes again. I said, look, this is your last warning, man. Just don't lay your hands on me at all. Pushes me again. He goes, let's go then. And I was like, mate, I don't want to fight you, but if you consistently keep going, we can do this. And he's like revving up and he's bouncing around, and I just took my jacket off nice and calmly, folded it, put it on the table, rolled my sleeves up, and I said, listen, man, this is your last warning. And he
Yeah.
saw how calm I was.
Yeah, bro.
And he's like, nah, I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Yeah, that's wild. But to be honest, I could understand that from his perspective. Like, that's fear right there. You know what I
He's
mean?
like, no, this guy's not right there.
Yeah, right. Oh my god, I'm in the Coogee John Wick, bro. What's happening right now? Yeah.
Nah, but look, at the end of the day, man, I've grown up, I was a very violent person, man. Incredibly violent person. And that was from a place of fear and anger. And I don't have that now. I don't have that fear or anger within me. Like when it's obviously needed, if somebody's in danger within my life and I really care about them and whatnot, then yeah, I'll go to all lengths to make sure they're protected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as a society, we are growing a lot more angrier.
Yeah.
And a lot more hostile and a lot more lonely. I think something that contributes to a lot of that is the drinking culture within Australia and the drug culture within Australia, which is absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, I was actually going to try and segue into this conversation piece next too, because when we were talking about the violence and stuff that happens within these households, most predominantly, I noticed the guys have been drinking. My grandfather's wife, who's a massive impact for our family. She's a beautiful woman. She served in the police force for 36 years.
Wow.
Head of Victorian Police State and ran over, I think, 14 precincts or something. She's done amazing work within her field. And when I actually sat down with her in the early days of me doing the podcasting, I thought, yeah, this is my first kind of like professional kind of talk. We started just with the boys. And I asked her the question, like, we were talking about drugs and stuff like that. And I said, because drugs are so illegal, do you think making them legal would solve a lot of the issues that we have here in Australia? And she said no.
Mm-hmm.
She said over 90 to 95% of all crime taking place in Australia is because people were drinking alcohol.
Yeah, or doing drugs.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, that was just the alcohol.
Wow,
Drugs
just
is
alcohol.
within that 5%. The drugs fall into that. Alcohol is responsible for 95% of the crime. And I don't know. My stance on alcohol is I believe that everyone should be able to freedomly be able to choose to do it if they want to.
Yeah.
I've made this decision not to do it.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes from a little bit of that place where you kind of lose control of yourself.
100%.
Trying to control your emotions as we're speaking is not necessarily an easy thing to do. It's something that will constantly take practice.
Yeah.
You throw alcohol on top of that,
Oh, man.
you're swimming in the dark.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think the culture that we live in today, I think a lot of people are suffering internally and they look to alcohol to make themselves feel better. And I know for me that was 100% the fact. You're out drinking with the boys, you're having a big night, you're blind drunk, and you just forget about the issues, the heartbreak, the loss of a job, the not having finances. But it's just a consistent loop, you know what I mean? It's like we go to a job that we hate, we hang around people that we don't like, and what we do is to numb our pain, or even internal pain, childhood trauma even. People just want to escape. It is that escapism that people are looking for, man. It's a band-aid to a gashing wound, man. Like it doesn't do anything. It makes things worse because alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah.
So the more you drink, the more depressed you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And the more depressed you get, the more you drink. It's just a consistent loop, man.
It's a crazy one too, because it's one of the only drugs, because it is a drug, that you can actually become dependent on.
Yeah.
And if you are someone who now drinks consistently and heavily, you can actually die trying to come off it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a crazy thing that people, it's weird. Ever since I decided to stop drinking, I looked at it differently from a perspective of drinking poison, because it's actually poison.
100%.
And you drink poison until your body wants to be sick of poison. And then you decide to ignore your body rejecting the poison, and you keep poisoning your body. And then it's so much poison that you start to go dizzy and you start to lose vision. And then and then all of a sudden your body is like, I can't take any more poison.
Yeah.
And it just shuts off.
Yeah.
You will just pass out, black out. And that's your
100%.
body like, I don't know what you're doing, but this ain't what you should be doing.
Nah, but the culture within Australia is like, oh mate, let's go grab a beer, and man, it's okay to have 1 or 2 beers. Don't get me wrong, like I don't mind that. But if you're sinking 10, 15 beers a day and not having consciousness and all that sort of stuff and just being blind every single day,
Yeah.
then I suggest you get some help, man.
Yeah.
And I think, look, for me, probably the biggest thing that I'm the same as you. I really drink. I don't mind having a 1 or 2 here and there. That's good, man. Bit of tequila, that's not bad.
Yeah.
But I'll never go out and become so drunk that I don't have control over myself anymore. And that's something I've done all year. Last year, at the end of last year, I was depressed. I was probably I would probably say one of the worst mental states of my whole life, and even at the beginning of this year. And yeah, I was drinking so much last year, man. I was just going out every single weekend with the boys, drinking and just living this life that I thought was amazing and all this sort of, but it wasn't, man. I was so far away from God, it was ridiculous, you know what I mean? And yeah, the heartbreaking truth is that I think everyone's trying to escape, but there's no escaping from that, man, because it just makes the situation so much worse.
Yeah, escapism it's been a big conversation piece that I've talked about on the podcast for the last few months, and it's because I've been playing on that word so much in my head. And truthfully, everyone is escaping something.
100%.
Everyone's running to something or from something.
Yep.
Like, and I don't even know necessarily, because I'm not a professional by any means in pretty much any field, but I don't know if it is a positive thing to escape, even if it is a positively beneficial task like exercise. If you're using exercise to escape something, maybe it's not the best thing to be doing. Exercise is a good thing to be doing, but you also can't escape your situations, your problems, your mindset. Everyone, and it's like, I say this with a grain of salt because I'm not the best at doing so myself. Honestly, I thought I was good, but I'm terrible at dealing with anything.
Oh, man.
I bottle it all. And to be honest, I don't drink because I haven't got that moderation skill. It's something that
You and me both, bro.
I learned. I have zero moderation, but I have great discipline.
Yeah.
So if I can just decide, no, I will not do this ever again in anything, or yes, I'll do this every day, that's cool. But I haven't got that availability to be able to balance and juggle how much things I can consume and things like that. It's just not wide part of me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably struggle with that, especially once you have a couple of beers and stuff. Like the discipline will probably go right out the door.
Yeah.
So you just not putting yourself in a position to even have to deal with that is probably the best thing that you could possibly do. And mate, I've got massive respect for you for wanting to do that, man. I'm the same as that with drugs. Like, I just don't do it. But let's circle back to what you were saying about the escapism aspect of things. I think to what you're saying, when you exercise to escape something, I wouldn't call that escapism. I would call that finding a solution, because when you exercise, I think exercise has been probably the biggest. So I've gone from pro boxing, I stopped boxing, and I sort of stopped really going to the gym a lot and all that sort of thing. I'm surprised I'm not mildly obese, to be honest with you, man. Like the amount I eat and everything like that it's thing. But what I found with exercise is that the dopamine release is insane, incredible. So I think exercise is huge in terms of it's good for your sleep. You get tired, you want to sleep. Then that rolls onto your mental health, because if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough. Like, your brain isn't able to function at its full thing. So with this business car pump that I was running, it taught me a lot about what sleep does to the brain. So you've got parts of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is then connected. That's the control center of everything, right? The prefrontal cortex controls pretty much exactly what you see. It then sends signals to the rest of the brain. So this is what's happening, everything like that. Now you've got a part of your brain called the hippocampus, which is your emotional response center. Now, when you don't get enough sleep, the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, or the amygdala, it severs. There's no connection there. So what will happen is that if you begin to feel a certain way, like start to feel a little bit of anxiety, the prefrontal cortex will say, hey, nothing's wrong, it's all good, let's just calm down, we're chill, we're good. But then when you're not getting enough sleep and you're sleep deprived, what will happen is that then the amygdala doesn't have that connection to the prefrontal cortex, and then it just spirals out of control. It just goes into a massive spiral, and it's like, bang, like we can't do it. So what will happen is that exercise then flows onto sleep then flows onto good mental health then flows onto a good life. So I think the escapism aspect of things is that, yeah, you could possibly be using it as an escape, but I think it's more beneficial that way. Now, the escapism that I think we're talking about here is that instead of confronting your issues, you go out and get drunk every weekend. Mm-hmm. You go out, get on the bender with the boys. You're not confronting what's in front of you. And as men, man, that's our biggest downfall, is we don't want to confront the things that are in front of us. What we would rather do within relationships, within friendships, within work or whatever, is that we bottle it down and then we get to a point where, so it's like a bucket of sand. You can put sand in there, and then it gets to the top and you can push it down. What will eventually happen is that bucket's going to overflow. And when that bucket overflows, that's our anger, our frustration, everything comes out, and it's we can't stop it. You know what I mean? So there's two separate sides of escapism, which I think is one, but the escapism that I definitely went through my life is that instead of confronting my trauma, instead of confronting my shit, I just done drugs all the time. Every day I would be doing coke or pills or whatever just to escape my life. And I've said this on other podcasts before, is that a lot of time when you see a homeless person, you don't want to give them money because they are like, your automatic response would be, oh, they're just going to go out and buy drugs and alcohol. Who are you to judge? I would escape. All I wanted to do was escape, and I was homeless, man. So I'm not going to judge them. But if you do want to make an impact on that person's life, if you're in a position, find them a job, grab them some clothes, food, coffee, even have a conversation with them, man. So the escapism aspect of things, I think that we are wired as humans to do it, but it's not healthy. That's why I think psychology is so, like, going to see a therapist or a psychologist is so important, because you've got to confront your shit.
Yeah.
You really do, man. And a lot of the time is like what we do, instead of taking responsibility for our actions and taking responsibility for our life being the way our life is that we then shift the blame. I'm like this because my parents treated me badly. I'm like this because of this relationship. I'm like this because I got fired. No. You need to take responsibility for your shit, confront it, stop trying to escape, go see a therapist, go see a psychologist, get the help you need and get better. Stop escaping. And that's what I try to tell all the people that I encounter in my life, is stop running from the things that are in front of you. Just confront them. I know it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
It really is. But at the end of the day, man, you can either stay stuck where you are for the rest of your life, or you can make a decision to confront the things that are holding you back. And a lot of the time you don't even know they're holding you back, man. Yeah. Until you get the help that you need, it's one of those things.
I have this within my not immediate circle, but within my life at the moment. There are people who are going through certain problems. You know, I was actually speaking with my brother about it just last night, and he came in to have a chat about someone that we know going through something, and I explained to him that unfortunately this person may have to lose it all for them to realize the true devastation, because for as much as we want to help, they're not accepting it. And I hate coming to terms with that fact. I hate, and I almost refuse to believe it to be true, that you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. Man. You have to want the help. And it does take, unfortunately, a big wake-up call for a lot of people. Like, oh no, I've lost the job. Oh, I've lost my missus. Oh, my kids don't want to speak to me. Oh, I've ruined the relationships with my friends. Like, my parents. There's dozens of different instances where people can feel like they've lost it all because they weren't going through those steps. And I think, personally, I would recommend that people just open up about how they feel. That's all they have to do. They don't like, whether it be a professional, whether it be a psychologist, therapist, counselor, anyone like that, or it could just be a GP when you're at the doctor's. I'm feeling a little bit upset about this, but for me personally, when I open up to my mates, I feel that safe environment. 100%. That's my safe spot. Yeah. I don't feel that judgment. And if I feel that judgment, it's like, I don't mind, because I know that he and whoever's there understands that when they open up, I'm there to listen to. Yeah. So the judgment kind of goes away.
100%.
You know, we can all sit and suffer together, but let's at least talk about what we're suffering about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's something that I don't think a lot of men have, man. So that's a blessing that you have that, firstly. I couldn't agree more with you with what you're saying in terms of if a person doesn't want to change, then they're never going to change. If a person doesn't see the way that they're living their life as wrong, then they're not going to change, man. Because what people like that you tend to do is they go back to what I was saying before, is that they blame others for where they are. It wasn't until I took responsibility for my life, for being where I was, for the mess ups in my life, that I began to change. And 7 years ago, I was at my rock bottom, tried to commit suicide. My grandma had passed away. She was like my mum. growing up, and she was like the closest thing to me, and I hit absolute rock bottom at that end. And I was on, how I came to my faith is that I was on a 7-day bender, no sleep, just living. I just wanted to escape. It comes back to escapism again. And I just had no value for my life, man. And I had a dream that my grandmother had passed away 6 months before, was disappointed in me and wanted me to go back to church.
Wow.
And I felt the dream like it happened, man.
Wow.
And I woke up after that dream. I Googled churches. There was a church 600 meters away from where I was staying. I walked in, man, and it felt like I met God face to face. But it was because I was at my rock bottom that I knew that I needed to change, And I think people are scared of hitting their rock bottom because they don't understand just the importance of it. But until you have nothing left, nowhere to go, nowhere to be, you don't feel valued or loved, then you're never going to want to change. And finding my faith, man, and finding God has probably been the biggest blessing. But it hasn't been the easiest journey since, man. I can say that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely want to go down this avenue of faith because it's something that I'm a strong believer in myself. I have faith. I struggle to identify with, I wouldn't say any religion, because I kind of identify with all, you know what I mean? Like it's the faith in God that is the number one thing for me.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to go down this avenue, but I want to quickly circle back to the position before we go away from it in homelessness. And that word stood out a lot for me every time I've heard you say it, whether it be on the Lucas podcast. I noticed that you went on that about a year ago. Who's a good lad. Hopefully he's coming on pretty shortly in the next few weeks, and also on Nick's podcast as well. And I think that word stands out because it's not something that I feel like many people have to experience in their life, but at the same time, way too many people do have to experience it. So I'm curious, like, just for a bit of insight that I'm not a part of, what did that whole chapter of your life look like circumstantially?
Yeah, man, it was definitely probably like, I can't really sort of put into words just how tough it is for the people that are out there. Look, our government tries to do a good job in terms of getting people off the streets. They could be doing a lot more. But this is the thing that I would love if our government ever sees a message like a video like this and everything like that. It's one of those things that it's you'll never be able to change somebody's external environment if their internal environment stays the same. The only reason I'm no longer homeless is because God changed within here. So if I had been homeless for 10 years and my internal environment stayed the same and I was just shifted from this place to that place, what happens is with these people that have been homeless for a long period of time, okay, they get into public housing, cool, but they are so used to being out on the street with so much chaos around them. When you're out on the streets, man, it's literally like you're trying to fight for your life every single day. Muggings, people stealing your shit, other homeless people, disease, sickness, trying not to starve to death, things like that, man. So if there is people out there that do judge homeless people, and I hope there's not, because look, everyone's got a story. A lot of the time, mental health is a massive thing. I was diagnosed a few years ago with complex trauma, so CPTSD, because of the life that I have lived. And that definitely sort of contributed to my life for sure. But being homeless, after a while, man, you lose hope. This is my life, that's it. No one cares. The sense of loneliness attached to that loss of hope just keeps you where you are. Like, I went weeks, days, weeks without talking to people, days without eating. And you begin to have this deep-rooted sense of lack of self-worth. Like, no one loves me, no one cares for me. I'm invisible to the world. You get abused all the time by people walking past you. It's such a surreal thing, man. And to be honest, like, I have come a long way since I was there. Don't get me wrong, but it's something that I'll never forget. You know what I mean? It's something that will probably stick with me for life, And that sense of loneliness sometimes tries to creep in a little bit now, don't get me wrong, and that sense of abandonment and whatnot. But look, if you are in a position to help homeless people, do it, man, because, man, I went and spoke to somebody on the last time I went out and gave sleeping bags and homeless to people, sleeping bags and like the homeless backpack that I give out to people. And we were sitting there talking to him, and he's like, you know, you're the first conversation I've had in 2 weeks.
Wow. 2 weeks is a long time.
First conversation I've had in 2 weeks.
That alone, like I understand the living situations, the food, the hunger, the sickness, the disease, but the lack of communication, for me, that's where my anxiety will start to come in, where it's because I'm a dependable kind of person. Like I can't go an hour without talking.
Imagine being in this house, bro. You got your family around you, all that sort of stuff. Everyone just walks past you every single day, doesn't say hello, nothing. Like you're literally invisible to them. Now put that onto a larger scale when tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people walking past you every single day within the cities and all that sort of thing. Man.
Yeah.
Can you like
the lack of communication, that would cause the biggest spiral out of all of them.
Imagine how bad that would be for your mental health, for your self-worth. Like we're created in God's image, man, and we have people living on the streets. And the cost of living now is sending families out onto the street.
Yeah, I know.
Man, our government has failed us.
Yeah,
beyond measure.
I could not agree anymore. The cost of living now is insane. I was speaking to a guy who's a finance advisor and I was just speaking to him about like applying for loans and things like that and the process people have to go through. And he was telling me now that a bank will account for $2,600 a month in living expenses, and that will not include your mortgage nor your rent.
Jesus.
$2,600 a week is what people are expected to pay. Like that's no wonder why the homeless numbers are going up, because like as the government is failing us for sure.
And then you look at Woolworths, that's in their last quarter profited $3 billion.
Yeah, they had the highest grossing year in profit history, and it's actually a 2% higher increase in profit than any other country has ever done.
And so I saw something in the Royal Commission the other week, is that they have a higher ROI, return on investment, than our banks, which are the most profitable in the world.
Wow.
Let's put that into perspective.
Wow.
So the rich are getting richer off the backs of struggling Australians. And homelessness is going to become way, way worse. And then you have the Prime Minister Albanese is like, we're going to make sure that we can get on top of it. Mate, you're too late. Look at the state of the economy. Look at the state of the world, mate. Look at the state of what's happening within Australia. You failed your people. You're spending $400 million on a referendum that got us nowhere.
Yeah.
Use that to the people, man. Use that for the people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We elect these people to look after us, and they don't look after us, man.
I'm almost at the stage now where I don't understand what's meant to happen. Is there meant to be some kind of cap that are being placed on these large monopoly businesses? Like if let's just, and I know we're going off topic and we will come back on as well, but like just speaking on the Woolworths and Coles price increases of all the stocks that have, everything on the shelves is increasing price, other than the last couple of weeks because they're trying to do a little fake show for the people, for the media at the moment. But let's just say bread and milk, they decide, all right, let's cut this in half. You know, let's just start giving people a little bit more money to spend each week. Let's take the most needed items, fruit, veg, meat, rice, milk and butter, bread, and we'll just half all the prices. Yeah. The people who are going to suffer the most from that are the farmers.
100%, because then they're gonna get cut down. This is the way to fix inflation. We have privatized natural gas companies, or not even gas, natural resource companies within Australia. So these people come into our land, they take all they want, they pay minimal tax, and then they make all the profit. Super tax those sort of companies and give back to the people through the taxes that they get. We live here. We're part of this nation. We are this nation. The people of this country are this nation. You're Australia. I'm Australia. Everyone that is a resident of Australia is Australia. The land doesn't make it Australia. The people do. Give back to the people. Super tax banks, super tax Woolworths and Coles and pharmacy and companies and organizations like that. Once we begin to super tax them, then it frees up more. Our taxes are through the roof, mate. And then Woolworths will be paying nothing. You know what I mean? Like we're the ones that are suffering.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but yeah, we are going off topic. So we'll go back.
Yeah, well,
sorry.
I'm glad we touched on it because it is something that I am passionate about. I just don't have the information in front of me yet to understand it. So I'm going to take your
that's fair. Yeah, but
words
it's
of advice with the
that
inflation.
then is contributing to the homelessness. That's where we're going with that.
Yeah.
Is that the cost of living is through the roof. There's not enough resources out there for the homeless people out there. Man, $1 to $2. Just give it to him, man. Go and buy him a coffee. It's freezing cold outside, man. Go buy him a jumper from Best and Less or Kmart or something, man. Go buy him a sleeping bag. Sleeping bag from Big W is $20. So every couple of months I go out and I buy sleeping bags and things for the homeless, and I go out and hand them out to them and just have a mad conversation with them, sit down, have a coffee, chill. And I think the conversation means more to them than anything else, man. That's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
And
I when I seen that on your Instagram, there was bare posts about it too. I was looking through. I was like, wow, there's like more.
Yeah.
That was inspiring for me. I remember back in the day because to be honest, I don't have any interactions with anyone who's homeless because I don't really go to any high populated areas anymore.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, going to the city,
Yeah.
I remember just passing these people who are homeless and then just, if I had an extra note, I'm happy to give it over, try and have a conversation and things. But I noticed in those moments for the first time, the positive benefit. And there's this quote that I love. It says, charity is a gift you give yourself. And it is, when I first heard it, it was bittersweet.
Yeah.
It kind of took away that feeling of charity it's like, I thought this was a selfless act, but this is, then it's like, oh, maybe I'm being selfish because I want the feeling of this. But once I started to understand that we are all sharing this planet together, then it was like, oh, I understand why there is that selfish feeling of wanting to help someone because we are all one. We are all here to experience this together. And that feeling is built into us to make us want to help,
Denzel Washington's once said this, is like, helping the less fortunate is probably the most selfish thing that you could do because of the feeling that it gives you. And man, I've made businesses and made heaps of money and it's felt good, and that there's no feeling on this earth like giving to somebody that can never give anything back to you. And touching on the homeless thing, man, I'll just tell this quick story because I know we're probably off our topic a little bit, but before I even became a Christian, I had $50 left in my bank account until the next day because I was getting paid, and I was walking towards. So I did personal training school when I was a boxer. I was walking to my PT school. You know where the bus stops are at Central and the crossroads like KFC and everything like that there. And I'm walking past the KFC, and just beyond the KFC, there's like a little sort of hole in the wall for a fire exit for one of the buildings. And I hear someone weeping, and it's pretty dark there, so I couldn't see. And then I got closer, and I could see this guy just on the floor weeping. I was like, mate, what's up? And he tells me his story. He's like, I'm a Muslim man. I got kicked out of my home because I brought a girl back. My dad didn't like that. She wasn't Muslim, so he kicked me out. And then the same thing happened again when I went to a new place to live, and now I'm homeless. I said, look, man, I've got $50 left in my wallet. I gave it to him. I called up this St. Vinny's, or I think it was one of those sort of organizations, and I said, look, do you guys have any spare beds for tonight for this guy to come in? And they said, yep, we can take him in for a little bit. And then I gave him the directions, and he went down there. 5 years later, I'm down in Bondi. This is still like well beyond before I became Christian. And there's a guy just staring at me. I'm like, he's holding this baby. I'm like, what the frick is this guy looking at?
Yeah.
And continues to do it, and then he comes up to me. I was ready to fight this guy because he just would not stop. He's like, is your name John? I was like, yeah, why? Who the fuck? Like, who are you? He's like, mate, you don't remember me. I'm Frank. I was homeless many years ago, and you came to me, and I don't know if you remember, it was on George Street, and you gave me $50 and sent me down to a homeless shelter. They helped me out a lot, and I've actually got a family now. You changed my life that day.
Wow.
That one act of kindness changed not only his life, but the generations after him. I'm a big believer in changing generations. You know what I mean? Changing someone's life can then change their kids' lives and then their kids' lives. And I think that's what Christ has done for me, you know? Like I've gone through my whole life being reckless. I've gone through my whole life feeling unloved and uncared for. And my faith has brought me a sense of belonging, of love. I felt love for the first time, man, when I walked into that church, you know, and all I'm going to say on that last thing is that you never know what your act of kindness can do to somebody's life, you know.
Oh man, that's a beautiful story. I love that. I love the full circle of coming back and then having the next generation, because I'm a big believer in that too. I believe, and I wanted to touch base on this before as well. I was thinking about the fact that all the trials and tribulations and trauma that you may have experienced in your life, just like a lot of people have, and have dealt with that and come to terms with that and healed from that. People are now through this process are able to cut the head off the snakes and to start fresh from the next generation. And I've heard you mention this on other podcasts before, that when you have talked about your childhood, I've noticed you've always followed it up with pretty much the next conversation piece, or only a couple later, about your hope for the future generation of kids that you want to have. And I actually noted down something, I can't find it now, but it was a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And because I see that and I resonate with that, because you want to take what's good and give that, and then you learn everything that's bad and cut that out. I actually just shared a quote on my Instagram, maybe it was like last night or early this morning or something, that said, a lot of people believe that when they're building a home for their very first time, that they are building it right. But the truth is, you grow up in your household and there are good bricks, broken bricks, half bricks, all these different types of bricks, and you're building a home with everything you know.
Yeah.
And so is someone else. They're building a home with everything they know too. And you want to be able to say to the other person, come into my home, leave your broken home. There's so many holes and broken bricks, but I have the home. But the other person's also thinking the same thing. I see the flaws in your house. You like, come live in my home. The truth is, you have to take the best bricks from either person's home and then build a foundation based on that.
Yeah.
And I see that as learning where the personal trauma comes from, self-development, and learning, all right, I love my parents, but where did they go wrong along the way? What decisions did I make that I ended up realizing later on in life was a bad decision to make?
Yeah.
And then you build off that, and that is how you change the future generations of people, because we're all just stuck. Usually, I'd say 90% of people are stuck reliving in the same environment that they grew up in
100%.
over and over and over again.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And what you said there about taking bricks from yours and theirs and things that have gone wrong and right and that's the importance of a relationship. Look, I'll touch on this, is that I truly believe the most important decision a man or a woman can make is the partner they end up with. I actually was in a relationship, not like, they ended about 2-3 months ago, man. And I've never been abused like that in a relationship before, ever in my life, man. She called me retarded, an idiot, like stupid all the time, and a dumb cunt. And the level of brokenness that I had felt, all my ambitions that I had, all my dreams that I had wanted to do, everything out the door. And you know the worst part, man, and this is going to probably make me a little bit emotional, is that my relationship with God suffered because of that. Like, I became distant because I no longer wanted to believe that I was lovable in that relationship. I no longer thought that I was lovable. I no longer thought that I was deserving of God's love. And God took a back seat. And one of the craziest things, I think, and why my faith is so important to me, is that, man, I'm a sinner. And the crazy message of the gospel is that I'm a piece of shit, man. And but the thing is, like, God has given me an invitation to heaven regardless of how bad I am. God has opened the door for me to have eternal life with him. That no matter how far away from him I become, he's never distant from me. You know what I mean? But the thing that I sort of struggle with is that, how am I meant to explain to you or somebody else that's not a believer that no matter how bad you are, no matter what kind of person you are, there's still an invitation for you in that house? I can't even believe it for myself, man. Like, the sins and everything, that the way that I live and how I turn my back on God all the time, man. It's one of those things that I beat myself up on about it all the time. But God's like, hey, you're my son. Come here. I love you. And then that overwhelming sense of love is there. That grace is there. But it blows my mind that Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and no matter what I do, heaven is always accessible through him. His love is always accessible through me just coming back to him. The prodigal son, there's a story in the Bible that's called the prodigal son, and it's about a guy with two sons, and he's very wealthy, and he lives on this big farm and whatnot. And one of his sons comes up to him and says, "I want my inheritance, and I'm gonna leave this place." And back then, what it means is that essentially you're saying to your dad that you're dead to me, and I'm just going to go out and live in the world. So dad gives him his inheritance. He goes out into the world, and after no time, spends all the money on hookers and all this sort of stuff. And then he finds himself eating out of a pigsty with the pigs. And he thinks to himself, even the servants at my dad's house eat better than this. I'm going to go back home. Now he's walking back home, and in the distance, he sees his dad waiting out in front of the house room, and his dad sees him. What do you think the dad does? You would think that the dad would be angry at him, right? The dad sprints towards him and embraces him as soon as he sees the son coming back. And that's what God's love does for us. We think that we're far away from God and we've turned our back on God and he doesn't love us and doesn't want us to be there anymore, man. As soon as we make that slight redirection back into his arms, man, it is insane.
You find that he was never really gone at all. And anyway, you just were ignorant to the idea of him still being there because he's with you the entire walk.
100%.
At all times. And
yeah.
There's a quote that I like to use to refer back whenever I'm thinking of the Bible in general, and it's about parenting.
Yeah.
It says that raising a child is like teaching them how to drive.
Yeah.
Your job is not to drive the vehicle for them. Your job is to be there to help when chaos is about to occur. You're there to grab the wheel and pull it back in. Mm-hmm. You're there to yell brake if you notice something. But you're not driving the car. They're responsible for the vehicle, which is their own life. That is how I see God. I see God in that regard too, where he's not there to tell you what to do. Mm. He's there to say, I know what to do. He's there to say, listen to me if you want to listen to me. Like you are completely independent and we have been given the gift of free will. Yeah. But just know that at any point, if you don't understand where you're going, why you're going, or who you're going to end up with in the end, I'm going to be there in the end. And I know. So you just have to ask. Like that feeling that you say you experienced when you first went to church 7 years ago and entered after that message that you believe you got from your grandmother. I know how that feels, and I know that is not something that can be explained.
No.
I've had debates with it because I experienced it from like I've had I'm going to call it an encounter. An encounter is the easiest word that I use, and I've had a few in the past where and to be honest, you won't know it's an encounter until you first make that step in which like, okay, I'm open to the idea of God being there whenever I'm there to ask for a guidance. And then it's not until you get to that, then all of a sudden coincidences are not coincidences anymore. Yeah. A situation like I think of, for an example, I remember just sitting in a sauna one time. I was just praying. I was probably about maybe 15 or 16 or something maybe. And I remember the exact thing I was praying about was like, man, all these people in this gym, like they're huge. Like, should I like get on steroids and like try and grow as big as these people? I was just praying for this. A guy walked into the sauna I've never met before, sat down next to me and just instantly opened up about the idea about why steroids are not a good idea. And it's like...
That's wild, man.
That word is a word that we use of coincidence because a coincidence is something that you can't explain that happened by chance that was so unpredictable, and it's a magic. Magic is another word for it. But once you have that understanding or even just belief in the fact that like oh, there's a God who's looking out for me at all
Yeah.
times, then you start, nothing is a coincidence anymore. Everything makes sense. There's no there is no magic. It's all, there's an answer.
It's a plan.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
plan.
plan. And oftentimes we go off that plan that God has for us, and we make decisions within our lives that we should never be there. And I think this will come back to the relationship that I was just talking about before, is that I chose to be in a relationship with somebody that I never should have been in a relationship with. You know what I mean? And at first I was homesick from the arms that were holding me. I was homesick from her. But it's oftentimes the arms that you should never be held in. If you continue to allow them to hold you, they'll not only hold you in that moment, but they'll hold you back from your future. They'll hold you back from your calling. They'll hold you back from peace. They'll hold you back from actual love. You know what I mean? I think oftentimes we're too scared to turn the page to the next chapter because we firstly know who isn't going to be in that chapter. And then secondly, we're unsure what is to come. You know, I think in our lives, we allow ourselves to stay stuck where we are with the comfort of knowing what is going to happen rather than the fear of the future and not knowing what is going to happen. But with God, with the Holy Spirit, our certainty is that, and the Bible speaks to this, it talks about that he has something for us that is going to be greater than what we have now. And there's that illustration where Christ is kneeling down to a little child, and the little child's holding like this broken, ripped up bear, and he has a bigger bear behind him. He's like, trust me, trust me. And that's the hardest part the hardest part for me when I first became a Christian, man, was firstly understanding that I'm lovable. Like, that was wild for me. And secondly, knowing that God has a greater plan for my life than I could ever imagine. That is beyond belief. Me of all people. Me, like you as well, man. Like, it blows my mind that the creator of heavens and earth, of every single person that has ever lived, has a plan for you, has a plan for me, has a plan for anyone listening to this podcast, man. And the gift of freedom and the gift of repentance and the gift of grace, the gift of mercy, gift of love is free. It's already been paid. My sins, the debt for my sins have been paid for, man. And that blows my mind. And what you're talking about, the coincidence, there's no coincidence in it.
No.
We know it's part of his greater plan, right?
It's not even just that there's a plan for myself, for you, for everyone listening, and for everyone on this planet. It's crazier to comprehend the idea, which I don't even know if I'm capable. I just know the words, so I'm trying to make an image in my head. But everyone on this planet's story is interconnected with everyone else's. Like, that is the craziest puppeteer of all. Like,
yeah.
Like, for every decision that you make and the your own story and journey has actually always been part of my journey to experience and have this conversation. And for me, when I look around at life, I see every single possible interaction and action that can be taken as destined.
Yeah.
I see it as necessary. Everything is necessary information. It's something that I was meant to learn to do or meant to learn to avoid.
Yep.
Like, and every bad decision I've made has probably been that decision for someone else to be like, okay, I know to avoid that. You know, like, I used to say this when I was a teenager. I'm a walking example. I'm everything you should and shouldn't do.
I'm definitely that.
Yeah.
Still haven't grown out of that. I'm still in my teens then.
Yeah. But it's, and that falling off your relationship with God is, it's like, I believe it to be when you stop listening to what you believe is the right choice to make, and you start to let your ego come into play. And these are only words that I know, I don't understand completely, but I believe that when you let go of acting what you think is right, and you ignore that gut feeling, and you ignore that biological response system to be like, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm going to continue to see this person even though I know this is the wrong thing to do. And I've been there. I've been in a long-term relationship that was, I could use the word torture, but I chose to endure it. So I'm not going to use that word torture, but I knew the entire time I should not be doing this. Like, this is bad news. Yeah. And I believe that is the same concept of ignoring God and choosing to walk your own path and not listening, because it's those moments in which God speaks to us. And it may not be a necessary voice, which again can come in the form of an encounter. Some people can hear a voice coming to them. They can see a person like me in the sauna that just pops up out of nowhere. There's a million different explanations for what an encounter can be, but I feel like the most common encounter is ignoring that gut feeling.
Yeah.
Because we are built with this path that we are meant to walk in order to enter greatness.
Yeah.
In the end.
Absolutely.
And I believe that when you're falling away from God, you're starting to ignore your own intuition.
Absolutely. And when we find ourselves in those situations, this is what I think is incredible, is that we can walk away from God, but when we're at our worst, we're like, God, please, I need you. Like I felt at the beginning of this year, man. So last year, I'll give a bit of a backstory. Last year was probably one of the toughest years in terms of business and finance and stuff like that. So Calm Palm flying high. So I built up this business called Calm Palm. 12,000 orders within 2.5 years.
Wow.
Grossed $1.3 million.
Wow.
And I thought I was king shit, man. I was like, look what I've fucking done. Forgot that God had done that, not me, firstly. And but do you know the craziest thing is, man, through all that success, I was depressed. I just put in a $50,000 order for a new product. So I spent $50K on that. Then I took on a marketing agency to do all my marketing because I was doing everything by myself. My sales dropped by 77% with that marketing agency.
Wow.
I lost $45,000 in 3 weeks of profit. And then you add the marketing costs that they had put onto that, it probably ended up being 60,000. And I lost everything. And I was at my worst. And the weight of everything, man, the weight of business, of life, of relationship, at the beginning of this year, man, it was just overbearing. I was like, God, like, please, take this weight from me. Take this weight from me, God. Like, I physically can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to live anymore, God. Please, like, I've been struggling my whole life. I've been one thing after another, God. Like, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired, God. Please just help me. And God's like, my son, you're trying to carry the weight of the world yourself. You're trying to do everything by yourself. I've never called you to do that. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. And it's oftentimes that when the weight seems like it's too much, it's that helping arm of God, the helping hand of God that just carries us. And look, I believe that the human soul, the human spirit is like a muscle. In order for a muscle to grow, it must first endure trauma. So you tear the muscles and then it comes back, grows back stronger. Then again, you go to the gym, you do bicep curls, you do leg up, you tear the muscle fibers, they grow back stronger. Our human spirit is no different. I am possibly the strongest mentally, physically, and emotionally that I have ever been. In terms of like, I feel like I'm unbreakable now. With Christ on my side and back to my faith again and yeah, I drifted away massively over the last couple of years and whatnot, but I believe that we all go through these things in order for us to become the best version of ourselves, man, and to become the strongest version of ourselves. A lot of time people just want to live a small, not complicated life, and they don't want to endure any tribulations and trials and all this sort of thing. But it's the trials and tribulations that make you who you are. I would, honestly, man, I wouldn't change my life for anything.
Yeah, good.
I love the person I've become because of my past, because of the things that I've gone through. Like, I've had guns pulled on me. I've been beat up. I've been bashed. I've been gang bashed. I've been, like, you name it, man. I've gone through it. You know what I mean? But it's all erased knowing the fact that I've still here, firstly, above all else. Like, I tried to kill myself multiple times back in the day when I was depressed and out of it. But the gift of life is just so important to me, man. And it just means more to me than anything else, you know?
Yeah, of course. I find that whenever I try and decide what am I most grateful for. And gratitude is another one of those things that I always refer back to. Natural instinct in faith that everyone has got that they are not aware they have, because in order to be grateful for anything, you have to understand that it was a gift in the first place, which is why when which is why Christmas is a perfect example. Birthdays, because you're grateful. You know, you might be grateful for people's not just presence in gifts, but presences in company, and you're grateful because their gift is their time that they're spending with you, not just the money that they're buying things with. But when I find that pretty much everyone, and I'm going to say 100% of people so far that I've met, their number one thing to be grateful for is their life.
Yeah.
Because there is no better gift and blessing than being alive.
Yeah.
You know? We have and I'm going to go into this a little bit, but the fact that we can experience every possible emotion, I wouldn't change any of it. I'm grateful for being down, because I'm only up because I've been down.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for being sad because I'm happy when I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, like anger is the opposite of being content. Like all these emotions I'm grateful for. But when the fact that every single person is grateful for being alive, at least at some point, I know that people go through hard times. I've been there myself, where you're not grateful for life and you kind of can't see it end in the pain that you're going through. I'm going to get to another quote in a second after that I've seen. But if everyone is grateful for their life, that means that they understand that it's a gift in order to be grateful, because it's like, and if you're going to accept it as a gift, it had to have come from someone, you know, or something. And it's like, well, then that goes back to the idea of God, because God is just a word and a blanket term for a higher capacity of consciousness than we are.
Yeah.
You know, it's metaphorically a father in the clouds. It's metaphorically an energy cluster. It's metaphorically the universe, Mother Nature. All these words we use to describe are just synonym. I think the word synonyms or anonyms, whatever it is, for God. So I believe that everyone has it built into their system. Yeah. Everyone has a natural belief in a higher power built in, and it blows my mind that anyone cannot dive deeper into that thought.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Blows my mind when people think that the world was created through a bang.
Yeah. Well,
I've seen explosions in my life, man, and I've never seen it create something. I can say that for sure, bro.
Well, to be honest, I do this with everything. Every piece of information I get, I attach it to another piece of information I've already got. So I'm probably not the best advocate for this, but when I think of the Big Bang, it doesn't take away God.
No,
you know,
God was the person that made the bang, maybe. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Or what if God is the bang? What if the Big Bang is a scientific explanation that we have at the moment? But that doesn't take away from the idea that the bang was destined to take place.
100%.
You know,
all I know is, man, is that I've experienced God on a deeper level, and look, for many years I tried to give up drugs and all that sort of stuff, and I lived a pretty messed up life. And it was only a decision that I had to make in coming to Christ that I gave up drugs forever. You know what I mean? And I am who I am today and doing what I'm doing today. And on your podcast, man, which is crazy. And I've lived through a lot and I've done a lot in my life, don't get me wrong. But to know that there is a higher power looking after us is, man, there's no explanation to it.
Yeah.
There really isn't.
I think the feeling is even more amazing, knowing that we have even been given the gift of free will to decide if God is going to be with us or not.
Yeah.
Like, that is, imagine being a parent and then giving your children the availability from birth to be like, I'm only here if you want me. I'm always going to be here, but if you want me to be invisible and you never see me, I can make that happen.
Yeah.
That is the most selfless act of all time, to have a God who is going to be there for every single individual, whether they want them or not. Like, they're going to be in their lives. They have the choice to be like, nope, or they have the choice to be like, yeah.
Well, let's add to that then, right? We're talking about selfless acts that God has done, right? He sent his only son to die on a cross for people that he knew a lot of them would never even turn to him.
Yeah. I know.
That is selflessness more than anything. He went through hours upon hours upon hours of suffering, whipped, beaten, bashed, hung up on a cross to die, stabbed in the ribs, and left there to die, man. For people that he knew would never, ever, ever have a relationship with him. And that comes back to the free choice again. That free choice of, do I believe that Christ lived? Through all ancient history, you see, oh, but it's written by men. Okay, so does that mean Caesar or any of those people went there? No,
Yeah.
Jesus lived. Now it's up to you whether you believe he's the son of Christ. But if you look to all religions, they all mention Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
They all mention Jesus. Every single religion out there mentions Jesus. And you know what Jesus mentions? I am the only way to the Father.
It's that whole idea of people choosing their own faith to believe. I understand it. I grew up Christian. I didn't grow up Christian. I didn't have any family who are religious. Never have. At probably around 13 or something, I went to the church for the first time, just with mates.
Yeah.
And I believed wholeheartedly in Christianity. Because I had those encounters, I had those experiences. I've said this on the podcast before, but it was a really impactful moment for my life where it was like another reminder where it's like, oh yeah, all right, yeah.
God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I doubted
Hey, take the wheel, Jesus, take the wheel, you know? And what happened was I was going through a bad psychedelic experience in the time, not just for that one night, but for a whole chapter of my life. It was all sorts of drugs, but psychedelics were really affecting my consciousness in a way that I was drifting.
Yeah.
And I remember one night I had a bad trip with a group of people. And the further and further I decided to dive deep into whatever bad thoughts I was having, I eventually got into a position at the end of the night where I could physically see, and I know I was tripping. I was on psychedelic drugs. So I understand that everything I was seeing was not what everyone else was seeing.
Yeah.
But I could see a white line in the middle. And I could see one of my mates sitting on one side and one of my mates sitting on the other on two separate chairs. They're the only things I could see. And they were speaking to me from God and the devil.
Oh, wow.
I had that interaction. And I understand that people may not believe it. And I understand, because I do it to myself, that like this was just an experience that I probably created in my mind, but it will never take away from the experience I had.
I've got it, yeah.
And it was just and both were speaking to me, and it was like the advice that was coming from them was also coming from within myself, but I knew what was the right and the wrong one.
Yeah.
And when he would speak, I would say like, oh yeah, that's the right thing. And then when he would speak, it would be like, definitely not, you know? And it was a cold-hearted slap of reality that I don't know, no one would ever be able to take it away from me.
No.
But I understand from that people are destined to go down their own path, their own religions, their own callings to faith. And it's not my job to tell anyone how to choose their religion, but I believe that everyone's meant to find a path to walk down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I can, I've got an experience like that I would love to talk to you about. So last year, when I was away from God, I moved to Bali for 3 months, and they have this thing called the Nepi Festival. And bro, it is possibly the most messed up thing. It just did not sit well in my spirit. So this Nepi Festival, and I'm sorry if I offend any Balinese people, I'm not meaning to. It's just something that sat unwell with me. I respect everyone's religions and what they want to do and whatnot, but there's like, for a week straight, there's like these, I would say 50 to 40 foot sculptures of these monsters, man. They've got like teeth coming out everywhere. It's like, they look demonic almost, in my opinion.
This is from the Hindu religion, I believe.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah. Is it Hindu or Buddhism? I think, I'm not sure.
Buddhism is
Buddhism,
a offspring
of the Hindu,
Hinduism,
So there's a week straight of that, and then there's one day that you're not allowed out of your house, no electricity, nothing. So you have to be in complete darkness and in your house pretty much. So what me and my friends decided to do, we went away to this place called Lombok, which is an island off away from Bali. It's about a 2-hour boat ride. The the boat there was a bit tropical.
Yeah,
but
I've been on a couple boats. over in Bali,
Jesus. It
they're
was
wild,
sketchy as heck,
yeah.
man. It was no air conditioning. It was about 400 people on there, and
Yeah.
it was just insane. But we went to this Lombok, and one of the people I was hanging around, they bought mushroom chocolates, and I was like, never done mushrooms before, so I'll give it a go. Just living, like, obviously away from God and whatnot. I just didn't really care. I was drinking all the time and living that sort of lifestyle. And man, I had this encounter where I was tripping, and I'm not recommending this for anyone because I never would do that now that I'm back with God. You know what I mean? It's because I was away from God. I was living that lifestyle. But it was like a wrestle for my spirit where there was like complete darkness for a bit, and then out of nowhere, man, this rush of color and energy just comes from nowhere, man, and just consumes me, and Christ is there. And then again, the darkness would come and overbear it. And then again, more power. Like, I could feel this happening within me, man. Like this rush of color, like red and gold, and just insane amounts of, now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably the blood of Christ that represented the red. Just a rush of color and this love and this peace and this joy just consumed me, man. It consumed me. Like, I felt it, but I couldn't obviously move because I was tripping out a little bit. But man, it was just the most surreal thing I've ever felt. And I think that then tilted me back towards my Christianity. And then over the last year, it's just been a consistent wrestle for my soul and my spirit. And something that I've come to realize is that the devil will distract you bit by bit. And he'll distract you with work. He'll distract you with money. He'll distract you with girlfriends, with girls, with bad friendships, with all this sort of thing. And something that I've heard recently is that a robber will never rob a house that he didn't think had value in it. So if there was a house that he was going to rob and he didn't realize there was something valuable inside it, he wouldn't rob it. The devil's no different. The devil will never try to rob you of your calling unless he realizes that you have value in your calling, that he's trying to stop you at every means possible so you don't get to where God has called you to go. And man, I can testify to that. I can stand here as a living, breathing expression of God's love and redemptive power, regardless of how often I turn away from him, regardless of the bad choices I'm making within relationships or friendships or anything like that. He's always been there consistently. And I think that oftentimes, like, we live in a culture now where Christianity, man, is so frowned upon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because everyone wants to live as they want to live. But look at the state of our world right now. Look at the wars that are being fought. Look at the people and how much depression and anxiety and suicide there is, man. We've turned our backs on Christ, and this is the thing that's happening. As you said about free will before, we've all been given free will. Absolutely. But we haven't been given freedom of speech in terms of Christianity anymore.
Yeah.
It's illegal to speak the gospel within public in Canada. You'll get locked up now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They say that the LGBTQ community, whatever it is the most persecuted community within the world. Man.
Yeah. The tides have changed drastically over the last few years. And it's because I don't understand where the root of it all came from, but I'm going to circle back to this psychedelic thing in a moment too, but just on this subject, that I heard a quote, Joe Rogan says it the most and he says it the best, that the apocalypse is always being prophesized, and these aren't his exact words, but it's basically what he's saying. Everyone has heard of the apocalypse, and in the biblical structure, it's meant to be a end of the entire world as we know. But he believes that it is happening at all times. There's always the apocalypse happening. It's just taking place in different parts of the world at different times. And I think that Christians have had their struggles a lot in the past. There's always been wars between every nation, and not just Christians, but everyone's had their struggles. But at the moment, it's almost like an apocalypse for the Christian community. There is a rise in everything that goes against their traditional beliefs, and even within the church communities themselves, it looks like there's a lack of leadership that needs to be taken to a higher stance.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for the Muslim religion because of the fact that there's no ifs, there's no buts. We believe what we believe, and no one will be able to tell us not to. Christians have lost that
Man, they
ability.
have, haven't they? They really have.
They haven't got that. There's no there's no backing behind the word of what they believe
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, the church itself is pretty divided, right?
Yeah.
If we look at Pentecostals, we look at Catholics, we could look at Orthodox. Within itself, there's so much division. And if we're divided about our beliefs, then how can we be united and make the world united into believing what we believe when we have all these different different beliefs and views about what the Bible says?
Even I believed for a long time that a marriage would only work under the idea of putting God first. So a Christian marriage. But unfortunately, what the stats are showing now, I've learned, is that I believe it's something like over 60% now of all marriages end in divorce. Over 60. It might even be 70 now, which is honestly, from an outsider of marriage, the most terrible odds to try and bet on. You know, it doesn't mean I will not try, but it's like if you're going to place a bet, that's not a bet that you'll put your life savings on.
Man, no, it's not.
And within the Christian community, it's only a few percent less than that.
Yeah.
It's like even within those households, it's like everyone on their own individual level is losing that ability to be able to put God first in their life.
Yeah.
I believe that once you do, and from looking around, and I don't know if I'm going to live a Christian-based marriage. I don't know who my future partner is going to be. I don't know where my faith's going to take me. I'm always going to have God on my side. But looking at my Christian friends and their families and their parents and things like that, they're the marriages that are lasting.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are putting God first to then help us guide our marriage.
Do you know why that is, though? Is because the Bible teaches us to become servants. When I say servant, it's not like a slave. You have to have a servant heart within a relationship to put the person's needs that are in front of you before yours. And I'm a big believer in that. Like, so when I'm in a relationship, I do all I can to make the person that I'm with feel loved, cared for, appreciated. Seen is a massive thing. Now, this is where I think relationships fall apart. Is that a man, when consistently disrespected, will become a version of himself that no one will want to see. He becomes short, angry, frustrated, annoyed, and you will see a part of him that you don't want to see. But then a woman says, I will only respect him when I feel loved. Now, do you see the bad situation of that? So you're essentially saying that you're only going to respect him when he shows you love, and he's not only going to show you love when he feels respected. Now, with the Christian faith, is that it says women submit to your husband, and that's the most out of context and crappy used verse in the Bible. Let me say why. It's because men use that to be dictators over their wives. They don't read the next part. And the next part says, so women submit to your husbands, and then it says, but husbands, lay your life down as Christ laid his life down for the church. Or treat your wife as Christ treated the church. Now, Christ laid his life down for the church. It's essentially saying that as a husband, it's my responsibility to look after my wife in a sense that I'm her protector, I'm her provider, I'm her safe space. Now, men aren't becoming safe space for women, and when they don't feel safe and they don't feel loved, they're not respecting the person that they're with. But when you say to the person that you're with, I'm only going to do this when you do this, it's no longer a relationship, man. It's become...
It's a contract then.
It's a contract, right? It's because I'm only going to do this if you do this for me. But when Christ came into this world and he showed us the example, the perfect example of love is that I'm going to love you regardless of what you do. That's the perfection of marriage and love, in my own personal opinion. I can't speak because I'm not married, but I'm very bad at choosing my partners, bro. Like I think I'm cursed on that. I choose some horrific, some very, very, I've had some bad relationships in the past, but I might be responsible for that as well. But Christ is the prime example to how we must treat our partners in love. And that's why relationships within Christian circles last a lot longer than out in the world. The world, I think at times is like, oh, we just lost our connection. Love is a choice. It's not a feeling. My feelings change every day. One day I wake up, I'm happy. Next day I wake up, I'm sad. Who knows? Feelings change. Love is a choice. I choose to love this person for the rest of my life. Even on the days that I don't feel like I love her, I'm going to love her regardless. And that's what makes a marriage work. That's what will make a relationship work. that we've been watching too many fairy tale movies, man. Like, oh, I just feel like I'm in love. Like he gives me this. No, man. Love is a choice.
Love is a commitment.
Love is a commitment. Yeah. And Christ committed to loving us, so we must commit to then loving the people that we have in our lives. And that's like, I'm sorry I get so passionate about it, but it's truth, man. Like with all these online dating sites, we're just on to the next thing. Oh, no worries, man. I was going to find another missus or the girls, I'll go find another husband. I just don't feel like I'm attracted to him. Or when you're in a relationship and the husband hasn't showed you love, like in terms of affection in a long time, because he probably feels disrespected, and you're then seeking love, and you go into external people to go feel love and stuff from. Man, focus on Christ. Focus on your marriage. Focus on the things that you can do to better your marriage. Don't look for external validation and all this bullshit. If you really want to be with somebody, you will make a way to be with somebody. It's as simple as that. But I will never say to somebody stay in a domestic violence relationship, if that person is treating you poorly physically and emotionally and abusing you that way, get out of there. But if there's not that, then do everything you can to make it work.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a while, and I didn't even necessarily look at it from an example of like, say, be like Christ, but I saw what religion was in general, not faith. Religion is a set of restrictions and boundaries in order to help guide you in your life, right? It's I believe religion and faith are separate in ways, because you can still have a belief in a higher power without believing in a certain book of gospel. But what I feel like all religion teaches us, and it also does within faith as well, but you will not get this without a certain scripture, is that you are in preparation for your future.
Yep.
When you are able to understand that you are not number one anymore, there is someone more important than you, then you already have the steps and the method and the foundation it will take to be in a relationship, because you're not number one. You've already been living your life like there is someone more important than me. I know I'm not important. I'm important, but I'm not the sole purpose of existence. Then you have that to put onto someone else. And then when you have kids, you've now been practicing by putting God first. You've been practicing by putting your partner first. And now it is a walk in the park.
That servant heart.
Yeah, your servant heart. That's what you said before that made me get to this conclusion. And it's, a servant is such a bad word, but a servant is a beautiful word. You know, a servant is someone who is fulfilled. You have purpose. You're a servant.
Selfless.
You know, it's such an amazing word, because a lot of people are lost. Most people are lost. They don't know. Everyone is lost so far. No one knows who or what the fuck's going on. That's what I've realized. But when you're a servant, you now have purpose. This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
You know, and a servant can be looked at bad if you compare someone who's just doing the dishes for someone who's really wealthy. But within that field, he has purpose.
Yeah.
So if you can find that method and apply that to your entire existence as a servant, then now you are destined to have been here for something, you know?
Yeah.
I find it so beneficial across so many fields. Faith. It's just the undeniable, untold, unspoken about enough truth above all.
Yeah.
That there's a word that my mate Jaden taught me, shout out to Jaden, called steganography.
Steganography.
I believe that's how you pronounce it. It could be stagnography, but I think I'm right. But and he's taught me it like 10 times, so I should know it by now. But that is called the message hitting within the message. That is like the Easter eggs when you're playing a video game and you try and find the little secrets, or you're watching a movie and they reference something from before. It's a hidden message within something.
Yeah.
And the Bible is the ultimate book of steganography. It's not a book. It's a library. It's a library of books that has been taking place across thousands of years that eventually all got until the point of Christ. And then there's books that we've missed within this library that have been taken out for every time that a new leader has grabbed a hold of this book. Like within that book, you could flip to any part of any page of any chapter of any verse, and you'll find answers for anything that you have within your life. That to me is just like, there's no greater piece of evidence than that.
And the wild thing is that if you look to when the Bible was written thousands of years ago, and you look to our struggles today, you realize that people have been struggling with the same thing consistently. Now, something I wanted to bring up before is that I believe that this world is in the place that it is now is because a lot of people have been led to believe that you're okay as you are. You're actually not, man. The whole journey of life is to become the better version of yourself. Now, when you're consistently being told, hey, you're okay as you are, there's no room for growth. When there's no room for growth, then what happens? You become stagnant. When you become stagnant, you begin to hate yourself. Now, I read this book recently called Never Get Angry Again. This book changed my entire life, man. So the basis of the book, it talks about that the human body is composed of three things. The flesh that wants to feel good, the ego that wants to look good, and the soul, or the spirit that wants to do good. Now, when we act out of flesh and ego, the soul suffers. Now, when the soul suffers, we begin to hate ourselves. So when I'm consistently doing something that I'm just like, I hate myself for doing that, we begin to hate ourselves. And how it sort of depicts this whole thing is that imagine for a moment that there's somebody in your life that you cannot stand to be around. Like you're absolutely like, man, I hate this person. I'm not saying I hate is a good thing, but and then imagine if you were told that you had to spend 3 days straight with them. You'd be filthy, right? Imagine if that person was you. You hate yourself. You have to spend every waking moment with yourself. And in order for you to not hate yourself, I believe you have to have a purpose. I believe you have to have something to work towards. That's how humans are wired, man. If we don't have something that we're looking forward to in the future, then what are we doing? We're just existing. We're not set on this earth to just exist. Life is not there to be endured. It's there to be enjoyed. And when we don't do that, man, we act against every human instincts within our body, man. Over generations upon generations upon generations, we have gotten better, more technically savvy, more advanced as a society. And now this society now is saying, hey, man, you're right as you are. Actually, you don't like who you are? Let's change everything about you. You don't like being a man? Let's change you into a woman. No, man. We are acting against our soul and our spirit when we do that. Now, how this thing works and what the ego does, right? When someone bumps into the back of you, this is the perfect example of the ego. When someone bumps into the back of you, you get pretty annoyed, right? Or say hypothetically, someone speeds past you and cuts you off on the road. What do? You speed up to them in order to see who the person is. If it's a young man on his smoking a durry out the window, you're like, oh, this guy's an effing wanker, blah, blah, blah. But if it's an old man, what happens to that anger? It becomes into compassion because that person doesn't know better. So with the ego, it depicts the world in a certain perspective and picture to make you look like you're never the villain. And this is something I had to wrestle with. So when I read this book, man, my whole life I felt naked at the end of it, man. I felt like I was bare naked. I didn't know who I was anymore. Everything that I had set to believe that it was everyone else's fault bar mine had been ripped out from underneath me. All failed relationships or my childhood, everything was on me now. Wasn't on anyone else. So as I was there and I was crying out to God, I was like, God, like, I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost my sense of identity. I feel like I'm bare naked. There's a story within the Bible where Joseph, I think it's Joseph. I can't remember the name of the person that we're talking about. Sorry, but his sins, he's covered in these rags right? And his sins are representative of those rags. And God says to the angel, take off all these rags off him. So then the rag takes off all these, the angel takes off all these rags, and he's like, God, I can't come to you now though, because I'm naked, like I'm bare. And then God says to the angel, now cloak him with this cloak of righteousness. And that's what I felt like God had done. So to people that are listening to this podcast, man, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to find something you're passionate about that is firstly going to make an impact, a positive impact on this world, and chase it with everything within you, because without purpose, there is no life. And without life, there's no existence, man. Find something that you want to get done. Find something that you're passionate about. Even if it's not something that's going to change the world, just find something that makes you happy. That isn't going to destroy other people's lives, man. do something with purpose that is going to make this world a better place. We want to be world changers, but we don't realize that changing one person's world is all that we need to do.
Oh man, I couldn't. Changing your own life will change the world. There's this quote in a Macklemore and Ed Sheeran song, It's called Growing Up.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a soft kind of song, but I love it. It is beautiful. It's a poem. And it's a letter that Macklemore is writing to his future child that is about to be born. And Ed Sheeran maybe was going through the same thing. Maybe I think that might be why they got together and did it. But Macklemore's writing this poem about how to live your life. And one of the parts one of the best quotes in that song was, "Don't try to change the world. Find something that you love and do it every day. Do that for the rest of your life, and eventually the world will change." Ooh. And it was like, man, every time I hear that, it's so impactful. It almost brings tears to my eyes every time I hear that verse. But I've kind of lost what I was getting at, but I'm sure it'll come back to me in a second. But when oh yeah, I remember now. Sorry. The words on purpose and finding that purpose is something that I always preach as well on this podcast as well. And something I heard recently was, if you're looking for your purpose, then find something that you're interested in and do it until you become good at it. Now spend all your time making other people interested and good at it. Yeah. And that's your purpose.
100%.
Like, fuck, that is so good, because I feel like everyone's looking for their purpose.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I found mine last year in the midst of my darkness, to be honest with you, man. So this mum comes to me. She's struggling with keeping up with repayments on a mortgage, everything like that, right? And I obviously had done really well with my business and started that up and everything. She goes, "Can you help me start a business?" And then I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a little business out of this." Look, she's done a phenomenal job. Now I found a product for her. I built her website. I built her marketing campaigns and everything on Facebook and Meta. And I actually caught up with her a couple of days ago because she was going through a bit of an issue. And man, she has turned that into a 6-figure business in 6 months.
Wow.
But that's my gifting now. My gifting is to help people start business. That's what God has placed in my heart. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey? Oh, I don't know.
Man, this guy's a finance guy, like Christian finance guy, like a pastor finance guy, man. And that's the vision I have for myself in the future, is to become like Dave Ramsey, to help people become financially free in a world that is trying to restrict us from doing so. The thing that breaks my heart more than anything is that the elite, which is our politicians and everything like that, is that they say all these amazing things like, we're going to try to help our people, blah, blah, blah. Without a lower class and a middle class, there will be no higher class. And if everyone is financially free, then there's no people to do the jobs that they need them to do. They keep people where they are. And I know that sounds like a bit of a conspiracy theory. I'm not trying to be like that, but it's the God's honest truth. When you go to school, right, you are taught to become a worker. Come to school at this time, do homework, you leave at this time, you have to ask to go to the bathroom. There's a set time. If you think about the times that you're at school, it's no different to the times that you're supposedly at work, from 9 to 5 or 9 to 3, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Same thing. Assignments then become work things that you got to do, deadlines and all that sort of stuff. It's no different, man. Yeah. My goal and my purpose on this life is to help people, everyday Australians, everyday people throughout the world, is to become financially free. I'm not nowhere near that now, right now, but I know for a fact that that's the calling on my life, is to help the less fortunate from any sphere of life. Whether you are less fortunate in a sense that you have a roof over your head and stuff like that, but you're struggling beyond all means, or you don't have a roof over your head and you can't even eat. I want to put myself in a position in the future to make sure that I can help as many people globally, and that can be my legacy left, not only to me, but my children. And that's something that I want to instill in my children, is to help as many people as humanly possible on this earth while you're still on this earth, and to make this place a better place. That's my purpose, man. That's
a beautiful, beautiful purpose, man. And I have only faith in the ability that you have to be able to do that. Man. since we are on this subject, I was very curious about this Calm Palm Australia.
Yeah.
I've seen it on social media many times in the past, and it was awesome to find out that it was you who got that going. So how did it all start? Like, let's just go from the beginning first. Like, where did the idea of having this online business come from, and what were your first steps to start this?
So let's rewind. So the story to how I got to Calm Palm has to start in 2017 when I was obviously found God. I was dealing drugs back then. Obviously became a Christian. Thought to myself, hey, I've got to stop doing drugs now. Went from being homeless in March 2017 to having 15 to 20 people working for me by December 2017 and grossing $35,000 a week.
Wow.
With my air conditioning company. That all came crashing down. I took on a massive job. The engineer on that job stuffed up. So with when you're looking at a big building, right? There's vents on the side and they're all aligned.
I'm a refrigeration.
Oh, so you're a
mechanic.
So the exhaust ventilation for everything from like all the bathroom and the kitchen.
All the waste air.
Yeah, all the waste air.
Yeah.
So that's meant to be going out this vent. And after we had done 3 buildings, there was 5 buildings to do. The builder comes up to us and is like, the vents on the outside aren't lining up. I was like, look, we're following to plan. So the engineer from the HVAC company that we had then subcontracted to, the engineer had messed up and not allowed the vents on the outside to be lined up. And the builder, obviously, with any build, they want it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. So we then had to go through, rip everything we'd done out and reinstall it so then it sort of matched. And because it was not a variation, but a stuff up on the engineer's part from the HVAC, the builder didn't pay the subcontractor, then the subcontractor didn't pay us. I lost $300,000.
Wow.
Lost everything. I had 3 company cars, 20 people working for me. I lost everything. 2019. Wow. So October 2019, my company went into liquidation. Then we know what happened in 2020, right? COVID.
Yeah.
Couldn't rebuild. The whole world stops. And in that moment, I said, okay, I've got to adapt. So then I got onto researching a lot about e-commerce and doing online business, and I saw that it was peaking and it was going amazing. So I just dedicated myself in that time of isolation to really focus on online business because I thought that could be something that I could really be good at. Then through that process, I realized that my learning abilities weren't the best. I was losing concentration really easy. My emotions were really up and down, obviously through COVID and whatnot. And somebody just randomly says, like, man, I think you might have ADHD. And I always had that inkling that I did. But I was like, yeah, maybe I should go get tested. So from there, I tried to look for a psychiatrist. Looked for 4 weeks. All their books were either closed or they had like a 9-month waiting period. I was like, nah, there's no way I can wait 9 months.
Especially through that period.
Man.
There was times when I was helping other people try and find the help they needed. It was so hard.
Impossible.
Yeah.
So I stopped looking after 4 weeks. And then I then said a little prayer one day and I was like, God, please, I really need to find a psychiatrist. Googled again, psychiatrist around Sydney. I was in the city and then one popped up. Rang them up. They're like, yeah, we have actually an availability this week. If you'd like to come in. I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Let's lock it in. They're like, just one thing. It's $750 an hour.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I said, you know what, I'll just bite the bullet this time. Let's just get this done. I want to sort of get myself feeling better emotionally, mentally, and have some concentration. Spoke to my mum. She's like, yeah, you had ADHD as a kid. You definitely have it. So I went and seen the psychiatrist. We just did some testing. He's like, yep, you've got ADHD. It's pretty evident. Come in one more time. I was like, oh, I don't really need to. I've got the diagnosis. He's like, no, just come in one more time. Best thing I've ever done. Because from there, next time I came in, this guy was just a bit of a crook, to be honest with you. He was just trying to sell me stuff the whole time. Oh, you need a $15,000 brain scan. You need to do this sleep test. It's going to cost you $20K. Everything that he was saying added up to like $110,000, man. I was like, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
But at the end of near the end of the session, he goes, you struggle with sleep and anxiety? I was like, yeah, massively. He goes, all right, hold on to this device for a second. Man, I held on to it for 10 minutes and I almost fell asleep.
Wow.
Yeah, it was mental. Then I was like, he goes, purchase one. I got one. It was 100 USD. Next morning I woke up. As soon as my eyes opened, I was like, I could start a business from this. And bang, just from there, snowballed. I looked around for different suppliers from overseas, finally found them. Got seven different suppliers to send me a sample, and one really stood out, so I got it. Ordered 100, and then from there, man, it just took off.
Wow.
Yeah, so it took me 6 months to get to 100 orders. Then, so that was from October to, so 5 months, October to March, I got 100 orders. Then from March to August, 1,000 orders. Then from August to I think February the next year, it got to I think like 4,000 orders, so doubled again. And then I ended up having 12,000 orders.
Wow.
1.3 million it grossed.
That is
in 3 years.
insane. That's crazy. So in the beginning process, when you just decided to go down this avenue of online e-commerce, did you have to do all of the steps yourself? So what did you focus on mainly? Was it building the website, building the social media? What any tips for anyone who wants to get into it? What's the most important things?
Probably the most important thing is to do a lot of research on market, which I didn't do at the beginning. It was just luck, I guess you could probably call it God. Well, it's not a coincidence what we spoke about. It was definitely a God thing. Do market research. If you're interested in, this is the thing where I think people go wrong, is they overcomplicate things. Oh, there's too many companies out there selling it. Okay, that's cool. Make yourself different. There's so many people selling this. Okay, figure out how you can make your company a bit different. But the main thing to start is to find the product. Once you find the product, it's pretty simple from there. I'm actually building an e-commerce course at the moment. That's almost done. It's about 8 modules. It's pretty lengthy. It teaches you step by step on what to do, market research. The important thing for when you're doing market research as well, in my personal opinion, is to see what the calculated average growth rate is for the future. So if a good average growth rate for the future over the next 10 years would be probably about maybe between 3 to 7%. That's a good average. So say hypothetically the industry that you're looking to get into is 100 billion, then next year is going to be at 1.3 billion. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. I don't know. I think something along those lines. But 3 to 5%. No, is that right?
I think so. That'd be.
Yeah. That's not. That would be 30%.
Oh,
so
that would.
Or whatever. Like it doesn't like.
Yeah. So it'd be 1.03.
Yeah, 1.03. But again, it's just to see the consistent rate of something going upwards is a very important thing. Find something that, like in my own personal opinion, say hypothetically you want to sell cat hats. Not a lot of people have cats, so then you restrict yourself. You want to find something that everyone and anyone can use throughout the world, like socks or whatever, like something like that. You know, it's just an example.
Yeah.
So something I'm now working on, and I think you're going to like this one, is I've started a company called Gentleman & Co. And it's just going to be the basis of men's accessories. But from there, once you buy from us, you get an invite to a Facebook group that is just all men that can speak about their struggles and all that sort of aspect of things. And then from there, it's essentially going to be, say hypothetically you're in Sydney. There's a chapter in Sydney where you can catch up with the people that are around Sydney. Say you want to come to an event, go out for beers every second weekend or whatever, every second week, and we just hang out. And there's like a brotherhood there, which I think men really struggle with. So with me and my businesses that I always do, there's always a purpose behind there. With Calm Palm, there was the homeless thing. So you always want to find something that is not just specific. I know the Gentleman & Co is just specific for men, and it is what it is. But for normal, like any other business, I would say find something that everyone is in need of, find something that's in demand, and find something that will help people. That's the first step. Then from there, Shopify is really easy to build a website. It's pretty self-explanatory. You don't need coding or anything like that. But man, it's a lot more simple than you think. And the number one tip I can give people is when they are starting a business is don't quit your job and then go start a business. Stay in your job, start a business on the side, and then from there still have finances and everything coming in. So the worst thing you could lose is just a little bit of money on this business. Don't spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars setting this company up. I set Calm Palm up with 1,000 USD.
Wow.
And it made 1.3 million.
Yeah. I'm
not a million by any chance, so I don't think I'm a millionaire because I put everything back into the company. But always have that steady income coming in to then fund not only your lifestyle, but then also the business. And then once the business begins to sort of really turn over some good numbers that can then accommodate your life, then maybe think about doing that. If it's taking up heaps of your time as well and whatnot, that's a really good idea. But if you can balance both, don't get rid of your full-time job until that business is making you an insane amount of money. There's no need for you. You always want stability over like a chance, because business is not guaranteed. I can say that for a fact, especially within this financial environment right now. People aren't spending as much as they used to. People are scared to spend because of interest rates and food and everything like that. So they don't have a lot of money at their disposal, especially middle class and lower class people that want to buy your products. They're usually the ones that do want to more so spend. They're not buying like they used to, man. The environment has changed. So, number one, research. Number two, keep your full-time job. Start something on the side. Don't spend over amounts of money on it just yet. Buy a few product to see if it's going to sell after you're doing the market research. If it sells, then you're cool. You got a thing. And get onto Alibaba, man. There's so much product on there that you can just buy from, man. It's so simple. Yeah. It really is the simplest thing in the world. Yeah. Honestly. But I've got a little side business on the side that I actually people pay me to start a business for them, and I do it with ease, man. It's just something I'm good at.
Damn, that's so. The whole thing is awesome. That whole thing. To be honest, you gave me that little bit of motivation I need again. Yep, let's get back into it.
And I'm happy to help you for free, bro. Honestly, man. Yeah. It's so simple, bro. Honestly, it really is. I think the biggest thing that you got to overcome is fear. Mm-hmm. But when you still have a full-time job, there should be no fear there, because you're not really losing out on much, really, are you? Yeah. It's you see people sometimes, and they worked in a massive corporate setting their whole lives, and then they go out and start their own business, and they want to be exactly like that big corporate setting. I ran my company out of my house, bro. Yeah. I didn't have an office. I didn't need an office. I could run it from my bedroom. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, there would be a lot of product and shit everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but it is what it is, man. You don't need to live this, like, don't put yourself on show for the world to think that you're this big. And I did that, bro. And God needed to humble me last year, which He'd done an amazing job at. Yeah. I was definitely humbled. But just start from a small beginning. Then when the company starts to take some good traction, especially with Meta, like that's Facebook, Instagram marketing. Don't do, like, people can do two sorts of marketing on Instagram and Facebook. Don't do the one when you actually go through Instagram and do it. There's a thing called Meta, which connects the two. It's called a business hub or business suite. Do it through that. That'll take a few weeks for the algorithm to really kick in and sort of put it into places where it needs to go, and sort of go after targeting the people that are generally going to buy. And then from there, it just snowballs, man. It really is as simple as you think it is. Yeah, that's so, man, I needed to hear that, because it's something that I'm always constantly thinking about. And I couldn't agree more with the idea of not quitting your day job. Like, that's the most important thing. At the moment, when I started doing the podcast, I had all these dreams and aspirations that, I'm going to be overnight the biggest success, you know what I mean? And I actually was going through a little bit of troubles at my current employment, and it was easier for me to just remove myself from that. But instead of going and finding a new job, I focus solely and primarily on getting the podcast to at least a foundation until the job came along, which I was able to go back to doing. Yeah. But I am working full time at the moment, and on the side, I'm trying to grow and start an air conditioning business. And I would love to I'll help you with that easily, bro. Yeah, well, I it's something that I understand can only happen if I am working full time. Yeah. I can't quit my job and go live a different lifestyle. I have to just add things on top of it, you know? Do you want to know the most profitable thing in air conditioning and how to do it? And this is a tip for all traders out there, is find somebody that needs workers. Get subcontractors working for you and subcontractors out. There were days where I was sitting at home, bro, when I had like 15, 20 people working for me. I was making clearing $450 an hour. Wow. And I wasn't doing anything. All I was doing was just becoming the middleman. Subcontractors work for me that then I subcontract out to other companies. Yeah, wow. Simple. Yeah. My mind, when it comes to business, just simplifies everything, man. I find the simplest way to do the hardest shit. And that's just how my brain is wired. Yeah. So, but bro, I'm happy to help you with any way, man. Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to be reaching out, because starting an online e-commerce business is something that I'm very interested in over the last few months, because I'm just trying to create exit plans for all avenues in my life at the 100%. Moment. You know, I want to be able to do great inside of my career,
but I want to have an exit plan in case I want to step
Absolutely.
out. I want everything that I'm trying to build is all an exit plan for something else.
Yep.
And that men's group that you're starting with, Gentlemen and Co. Gentlemen and Co. That is such an important thing that we need to have in our society. I sat down just last episode with a bloke called Aaron Huey.
Yep.
And he is at the moment a voice for men's mental health inside of the construction industry.
Yeah.
He's trying to push this narrative that it's never you don't have to wait until the last minute before you're able to go start seeking help. Let's try and build the foundations before we get to that breaking point. And he's doing an amazing job. He was just doing a seminar through last week or this week, where he was out speaking to mass people. He does shows and conferences and he goes around to construction sites and he's doing an awesome job. And he's a part of a 12 lad group where their purpose is just to meet up, have dinner, catch up over a couple beers, watch a game of sport.
That's it.
And everyone takes their turn of expressing how they're feeling.
Yep.
And it's no one else's job in that circle to fix someone else's problems.
No.
They're not there to judge them. They're not there to give them advice.
Yeah.
They're not there to tell them what they're doing is wrong or right.
Yeah.
They're there to listen to each other. And if one asks for advice, then it's their job to be able to give anything they've got.
I love that, man. And the main focus for Gentlemen & Co. is to have that brotherhood, but also to instill masculine. And when I say masculine, like you have to, the fact that I even have to elaborate what I'm trying to say here is stupid.
Yeah.
When I say masculine, I'm not talking about like the bad masculine. I'm talking about masculine men that lead, protect, love, and look after their family. And not if they don't have a family, just to be a good person in society. That's what I want to instill within the Gentlemen & Co. crews. So with the different chapters that hopefully can have globally, it's like a small group of 15 men that they do go out every second week or host somebody at their house and have a barbie together and have a few beers. And the most heartbreaking thing for me is to read the statistics that 90% of all suicides are males. Yeah. That a man an hour or a man a minute is dying globally because he's either lost his whole livelihood with his family. His wife has just said, I don't want to be with you anymore, or he's lost a job, or he just feels lonely, or he feels like he doesn't have anyone to be there. I want to stop that, man. I want men to but it all comes down to society playing its part as well. As men growing up, are just like, oh mate, toughen up. Like, be man, don't cry like a little girl, you little bitch, and all this sort of stuff, man. I want to break that stigma that getting help is actually strength.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. I find that to be personally the hardest thing to do as a man. Ask
100%.
for assistance to stop that moment that I feel like all men get, because I get it a lot, where it's you're dealing with something and you isolate yourself from the world, but going and admitting what is wrong, talking about your feelings, like that is a difficult pill to swallow, but the self progression that comes afterwards is unbelievable.
Insane, right?
It's crazy. We lose 9 people a day in Australia to suicide. 7 of those are men.
Yep.
7 of them, and I think something along the lines of like 60% of those are in the construction industry, which is what I learned from Aaron this last episode. But that is a huge number. 7 men a day, 9 including the women as well.
7. It's 9 people too much.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is 9 people too much.
That is so much more than I could have imagined it being. I would have assumed it would be a couple hundred people a year, but yeah.
That we're losing to suicide, to thinking that there's no hope, and I think that we can relay that back to purpose again. When you have a purpose, man, you're unstoppable. Yeah. Because you know, regardless of what's put in front of you, you know the end goal to where you're going, and you're not going to stop until you get there. Yeah. And I pray and I hope that anyone listening to this podcast today, man, I hope that they come out of this conversation with me and you feeling better, feeling like they do need to get a purpose, but also in the same token, I hope that they can get a renewed sense of motivation to know that I was suicidal, homeless, addicted to drugs, was going nowhere in my life, man. And in 6 months, my whole life shifted. You know what I mean? I don't do drugs anymore. I rarely drink. I've got a full-time job now again. I'm starting businesses up for people left, right, and center. Like I'm helping my mum at the moment start a business up, and I'm going to, in the future, get another business again. But at the end of the day, man, your life can shift just with a small mindset shift. You know what I mean? And that's all it took. It only took for me to understand that I actually am lovable and loved, and Christ looks after me and died on the cross for my sins, and that shifted my whole life, man. It really did. So it's just one of those things, man, that anyone can do anything that they put their mind to, and that's what makes humans different to the animal kingdom, is that our brain has the ability to adapt, adjust, and change. And I think that that's what makes us so powerful.
Yeah, I love that verse that says God will test his most capable soldiers. I know I'm paraphrasing it. I don't remember which one it comes from, but it is so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. And the fact that you have gone through this, and it's one of the questions I'm about to ask you as well relates to it, and that's so relatable for a lot of people to understand. You know, when people hear, like me, all these inspirational, motivational quotes from things online with all these high followings and high achieving people and multi-millionaires, it gives me that boost I need. Like, let's get up, let's get active. And then it's easy to fall off because the steps are so much further away in order to get to their positions, because it's like there's no relation between the stuff I'm consuming, the person giving the message, and the situation that I'm in today. But what I learned on the last episode I have done is that what Aaron was telling me is that you only have to be 3 steps ahead of someone in order to help bring them to your position. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be completely set up and successful and have all the kids and all the kids have got great jobs and all these. No, you only have to be a couple steps ahead of someone to be able to reach down a hand and bring them up into your position. Yeah, which is, it's amazing that you're out there speaking and giving this message to anyone who's willing to listen. Yeah. And the question I had was, that's not a common trait. That is not for starters, it's not a common trait to even want to be on camera for photos, let alone long format conversations and podcasts. Yeah. To be able to be a confident, masculine man and also be vulnerable to a position in which you can talk about what is not only good, but what is bad. Where does that characteristic trait come from in you? How do you have that capability to be vulnerable? And on top of that, why do you choose to speak on podcasts about it?
Look, I think vulnerability for me has been a journey of consistently not being vulnerable, and I saw what it done to me. You know what I mean? But look, don't get me wrong, vulnerability isn't something that's easy to do by any means. You're putting yourself out there for the world to see a part of you that not many people know about. And look, I've been asked to why do podcasts. When I've put podcasts up in the past, the overwhelming response that I get is, man, this changed my life. Thank you. This helped me out so much. Thanks heaps. You know what I mean? And I don't, like, people say I'm bullshitting or whatever. I don't care what they say, but people think that I'm just out here trying to big up my ego, but it's not that at all. I want to make an impact on this world. I take people out with me to do the homeless run, not to show that I'm great or I'm doing amazing things, and I don't post it online to do that. I post things online for awareness. And as men within our society now, we really struggle with vulnerability. We really struggle with showing our feelings and showing the world who we really are. So we put a mask on. I don't have a mask, man. I'm who I am, and that's it for me. You know what I mean? The reason why I do podcasts and I speak about what I speak about is because I want to give people hope. If someone like me, man, that grew up doing what I was doing, made so many stupid mistakes, can still wake up in the morning and be grateful for what he has and know that the love of Christ it will endure anything that I ever go through, man, then my job is done. God has given me a voice. God has given me the ability to talk and to be resilient and to go through what I've gone through. So I think the world needs to experience that and understand that I don't do this for myself. I do this for them. I do this for the people out there that are struggling right now. I do this for the person that's suicidal. I do this for the person that feels like there's no hope or there's nowhere to go. That's why I do what I do. And this last relationship that I was just telling you about before, she was like, I don't want you to be on podcasts. And that felt like she was taking a bit of me away. And when I reached out to you the other week and you said, yeah, man, like I'd love you on, I felt like I'd regained myself again. Because this is my calling here. My calling is to motivate and encourage others out there that regardless of the situation that you're in, once you turn the page to the next chapter, regardless if that person that's in your life that has held you back is still there or not, the next chapter will be written greater than the chapter that you're in right now, unless you don't make the changes that you need to. And for me, I consistently change. I consistently adapt. I consistently make myself better by listening to things that are going to be better, reading books, learning, everything like that. The only way that your story will ever change is if you make a conscious decision that it's time to change. And if you choose to stay the same as you are, you will end up the same person in 40 years. And that scares the shit out of me, man. It scares the living heck out of me to know that if I don't make changes in my life today, then in 40 years' time, I'll be in the same position that I am right now.
My biggest fear, and it drives my entire life, it's probably the only fear I really have, is getting older, looking back and not doing enough. That is such a strong feeling that it's the reason I do everything.
But can I ask you something? When will it ever be enough?
It won't.
There you go.
It won't. But
so you're going to have that regrets though.
I'm happy with that. You
So-
know, I'm more grateful for the fact that I will never do enough to please myself than if I never had that feeling in the beginning. And I think that I lived a life thinking ignorance was bliss for a while.
It's not though.
And I believed that, and I said it on the podcast many times throughout the history of doing so, that if I had the option of knowing that my partner who I love dearly and who loves me dearly for my entire life was actually secretly like having an affair or like cheating or lying to me or something, if I had the option of knowing the truth or living in the ignorance bliss of thinking everything's perfect, I would choose the ignorantly perfect life, because I thought to myself like, nah, I'd rather just be happy and content.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning now is I'm starting to try and dive deeper into myself, that I'm happy to face the burden of what feels like an overload of information sometimes and a constant pursuit of growth and never being enough, because without it, I would not be enough anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I'm never going to be the man, but I'm going to be confident knowing that I'm always going to try and be it.
Yeah. Let me touch on that, what you just said there. I think I heard a story, and this rabbi is talking about a lobster. And he starts it off by saying how a lobster grows is that it will grow, the shell itself doesn't grow. So it has a hard shell around it, and that doesn't grow. But the lobster within it, that grows. So what will happen is that the lobster within the shell will grow. It will get to a point where the shell becomes confined and restricted and tight and uncomfortable. So what it does is then it goes underneath a rock, hides itself away, sheds its shell, and then grows another one, and then it grows into that. And then again, it does the same thing, and it's a consistent cycle of that. Now, the stimulus to the lobster growing is it feeling uncomfortable. The reason people don't grow is because they're scared of the uncomfortable feeling and the fear of what the future holds. But the stimulus to growth within our lives is the uncomfortable feelings that we feel. And the analogy of a slingshot must first go backwards in order for it to be fired forward. And the further it goes back, the further forward it goes, is such a perfect analogy for us, man. Sometimes we pray to God, I need change. And then the whole world around us unravels and we fall into complete chaos. But God's like, you asked for change. In order for you to change, there needs to be chaos. If there's no chaos, there's no change. So I need to unravel everything in front of you in order for the change to occur that I have planned for you. And I think that that's so powerful, man. It's so powerful that we have the ability to firstly change, but secondly, that we have the endurance to be able to endure the chaos that comes with it.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Ooh,
that was wild. That.
Jeez.
yeah.
That's speaking of me, bro.
We'll be clipping that. Don't you worry about that one.
Woo!
Yeah, I love when that
I was just like, what the frick?
I love when that happens, man. I love it when all of a sudden you enter that flow state of just letting the words come to you, and you're just like, ooh.
That was a Holy Spirit moment right there, brother.
I go back and I edit sometimes. I go back and edit it, and I'll just be like listening to something I've said, and I just have to stop and go.
Pat on my back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. It flowed. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the truth, man. Change comes. Chaos and change is like very, very close.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can't have one without the other.
Well, we mentioned Jordan Peterson before, and he has a book, 12 Rules for Life. One of the chapters in that book, it's funny, one of them is about the lobster analogy as well. It's not exactly how you said it, but along the lines of living a life like a lobster. And another chapter is called Chaos and Order. And order is great. You have to have comfort, stability. Chaos is great because you never know what's going to come from it. You can't have one without the other. You have to learn to balance and ride that wave of touching into unknown, untapped, undeciphered waters that you're going to be going through with no idea of what's on the other side. With also maintaining something that you can come back to and balance. People say it's not good to have an exit plan or a plan B or a backup. I disagree entirely. I believe that you have to have a pursuit, and it's not a backup plan that you're depending on in case you never make it to your destination. I believe you're able to have a backup plan in case you change your course in what you want. So you're able to just transfer into another path. But both paths are still going forward. I don't believe a backup plan or a plan B is detrimental to a strategy, to a plan A.
Well, your ultimate plan is comfort, right? In terms of like living a comfortable life. And that's the most important part. And I think what brings us comfort as faith people is knowing that God is in control, man. That in the chaos, that God is in control. Because what's that Bible verse? For I know the plans that I have for you, plans for you to prosper and not to harm you. Things like that, man. And something that I've read from the Bible, and I there's a verse where it's like, you will pass through the waters and you will not go down. You'll pass through the raging, you'll pass through the sea and not go down, or something like that. And you'll pass through the raging waters and not be swept away. You'll go through the flames and not be burnt or coming out smelling like smoke. And something that I've gathered from that is that God never promised us calm waters, but he promised us a safe landing. And I think that regardless of what we go through, man, when we have our faith in Christ, then we might not understand what is going on. And a lot of the time we're our own demise and we do things to harm ourselves in terms of like life choices we make. But it's just all for the purpose of what comes afterwards, you know? Like Christ is in control. God is in control. I can mess up as many times as I want, but at the end of the time, God has given me the blueprint to my life, and it's up to me whether I want to follow it or not.
Bring on the chaos, man. That's my takeaway from this podcast.
100%.
Bring on the chaos. I'm ready to tackle any situation because I know what's coming after. You know? Like any trial, any tribulation, any trauma is left with a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's
100%.
like, that's my biggest takeaway from this podcast. I have got one final question that I do want to ask you, and I ask everyone at the end of the podcast. I hate asking it because it lets me know it's the end of the podcast. That's the only reason I hate it. All right. So before I ask you, I have to say thank you very, very much for coming and doing this episode, man.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
It's been a gift to me. I know you mentioned that it's been amazing to be able to find yourself again, and I appreciate the words you gave, and I really feel, not for the first time, but for the first time in this way, the gift in what just chasing my own passions can actually do to someone else. So I really appreciate the fact that you feel like this doing this episode was a way to find yourself again. Like,
absolutely, man. I appreciate that, man.
That means a lot to me.
No,
so
it really does. Man, it's been a blessing being here, man. So thank you so much for having me on here, and hopefully I've given people some wisdom and something to take away from this podcast. And obviously, when you do a podcast, you're like, oh man, did I do a good job? Did I not do a good job? I'm not sure, but look, I know that today was definitely a God thing, man. And you're absolutely right, man. You have given an opportunity for me to find myself again. And I think that's a huge thing. So I appreciate that a lot, man.
No, I thank you. And the way I look at it is whenever I'm doing any episode, the episode is there for anyone to want to listen to. That is as far as I'm willing to put my brain towards it. Like my goal is to do the best episodes I can, to constantly grow, to constantly improve and create the best content possible. But I see this episode as me and you and I's experience. You know, if you're feeling like, I hope I did a good job.
No, you did an amazing job, man. Honestly, you did an incredible job, man.
I feel like for everything you've done, I wouldn't worry about whether you've done a good job or not, because for me personally, it's been an amazing episode.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So the last question I have to ask you is relating to a lot of the stuff we've touched on with mental health and things like this as well. And that's, if someone comes to you for a piece of advice because they were feeling depressed, mostly because they were lost, what advice would you give to that person?
Look, I think the first thing I would probably say to somebody is, firstly, how are you sleeping? I don't think we understand the importance of sleep within our mental health struggles. Secondly, what's your food like? How are you eating? If you're eating a lot of shitty foods, that's going to do. But the main thing is what environment are you in? What are the people you're surrounding yourself with? What's your room like? Is your room really messy and filled with crap and all this sort of stuff? Is there a lot of clarity in your household or in your house or whatever? Environment is very important. How do you look after yourself? Are you getting haircuts? Do you go to the gym? They're also very important. And I know that it's a lot of external things. I understand that, but if I am an overweight man that never gets his haircut, barely showers, brooms a pigsty, what's that going to do to my mental health? I'm going to be in a shitty place because my external environment is in a shitty place. Second, like another thing is that do you have people around you that support you? Support, I think, is huge. Are you taking steps to have people around you that support you? I think as men, we really struggle to open up, and it's a blessing that you've got people around you that you can sort of just open up to and have no judgment. A lot of men don't have that, or a lot of people don't have that. Girls have it. There's something I'm very envious of the girls. They have like an amazing support system around it. You go girlfriend, or like, you know what I mean? A lot of it's fake, but they still have that around them. You know what I mean? And I think that
yes, queen.
Yeah, yes, queen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you don't need him. Shut the
Yeah.
But yeah,
that is a good thing for them to have that.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. And they can sort of just express themselves and sort of just get everything off. Something that has really sort of impacted me is mental health, and my mental health is it might be a complete stranger, man, but they give me things and they've said things that have completely shifted my life. So at the beginning of my psychology or my therapist journey, where I started going to therapist, and like I used to use language a lot, like I'm really broken. I'm so broken. I'm so broken. I'm so broken. And after like 2 weeks of going to see this one therapist, she goes, John, you always refer yourself as broken. I just want to let you know you're not broken. You're resilient. And bro, like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it now. Like I still think about that to this day. Things like that, man. Like incredible. Like it's seeing a psychologist isn't weakness. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably the toughest thing you'll ever do because you have suppressed so many emotions for so long, but it's not getting you anywhere. So do what you need to do to get yourself better in terms of finding ways to move past the thing that is holding you down. We have freedom to live an amazing life, but oftentimes we've got one hand carrying the thing that is like the trauma that we have behind us, and one hand on the door in front of us to sort of get through, where the trauma behind us isn't going to fit through that door. So unless we let go of the past and let ourselves go forward, we're always going to be stuck there. You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing, man. Like this is the way I refer it to in Christian sort of Christianese, I call it, is that Christ has freed us from the prison of sin and pain. The door is unlocked in the prison door, but we're too scared to walk through there. Like it's open for us to walk through that at any time, but we choose to stay in the prison. So my past is no longer my fortress; it's my fuel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love
That's
that.
the truth, man.
Yeah,
You can let your past be the reason why you're still where you are, and when you're stuck where you are, and it becomes a fortress around you, and then you can't move forward. You're stuck in there, or it becomes the reason why you make yourself a success. It's completely up to you.
yeah.
It's a choice.
Perspective. It's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's man. I couldn't have said that anymore myself. So many times throughout this episode, you've given me quotes and sayings and things that I can't wait to go back and edit, so I can write them down. You know, like I don't want to lose any of them. But I think you have an amazing mindset, and that answer is a different answer. Just like every time I ask the question on depression and feeling lost, and one of the first things you said was, "Are you getting enough sleep?" Like that. I think that's the first thing you said, like that, and then diet and things like that. Yes, the whole overall message is there's simple things you can do to start getting this haircut. God, that's so true, man. If I don't get a haircut, I'm feeling it.
Bro, 2 weeks, bro. I was like I would say a month ago, I was like hella down.
Yeah.
Hadn't got a haircut in a few weeks. It's like, man, what's going on? I got a haircut. I was like, oh, I feel myself again.
Yeah.
It's just looking good, man.
Yeah.
Looking good, making yourself look a little bit nice. It doesn't cost that much to get a haircut. $30, man. Come on. Like, just don't eat out one night and go and get a haircut. Just chill out. Get yourself in shape. If you can't run because you're too overweight, go for a walk. If you can't walk, crawl. Do something to get yourself active. You know what I mean? And because when you're active, the serotonin and the endorphin levels that are in your brain release. But that's again why people are addicted to drugs and stuff, because there's a hyper exertion of dopamine and stuff like that when you do it. And then when you're depressed, you're like, your brain thinks, what can I do to get myself happy again? Okay, yep, back to drugs, and that's where that loop comes from. But exercise can be addictive. Healthy eating can be addictive. Sleep is the most important thing, man. You know what I mean? You can go 4 days without eating. Like, not easy, but like it can be done. Yeah. You cannot go 4 days without sleep. It's impossible. Sleep single-handedly is the most important. That's what the biggest thing that came out of Calm Palm is that sleep is the most important thing for me. And it's just simple things that I have control over that can change my whole mindset. Simple.
Beautiful, man. I love it. I loved this entire episode. It has blown me away. To be honest, I knew it was going to be a good conversation, but just the avenues and paths we're able to go down has been so enlightening for myself. That, so I know for a fact the people who do listen, because I'm close mates with a lot of them. Yeah. To be honest, all of them. They're all the boys, and the girls who do listen as well. But everyone is going to be able to feel the same thing I've felt.
And
that's at least for the minimum a sense of drive. You know, to at least try and achieve something more.
That's all I've ever wanted, man. Just to motivate people and encourage people that there is a better life out there if you really want it.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, as I said, man, I'm very, very, very grateful for it.
Anytime, man.
I want to be able to sit down again in the future.
Absolutely, bro.
And just thank you.
No worries. Thank you, man. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, for everyone listening, thank you very much for making it to the end of the episode. It was an amazing episode this week, and there'll be another episode next week. That's it.
Shawty just a lie, yeah, I had to put her on. Bought a two-seater, yeah, we heading for the sun. Shawty got my high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stunt.